You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a special treat for you today. We have a new house band with a new dimension in rock and roll. We have the one, the only, Dragon Sound.
This band is the only family I had.
They're all black belts in Taekwondo and they're pretty bad.
I want you to mess it up by going out with a second-rate musician like that John character.
They came in here to play goddamn songs for kids!
When the forces of evil get out of hand, there is only one man to call. One who can even the score and balance the scale.
Don't try it, scum. I'll blow your fucking head off.
He is Special Agent Peter Goldson, and he plays for keeps. The heroin trade is a dirty business, and to clean it up, sometimes you have to dig in and start at the bottom.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Next week, we are taking on a massive horror classic, so get ready for a long, deep dive, I'm sure, and join that sleaze, baby.
That's right. We decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover as well. Patreon subscribers also get an on-air shout-out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for 6 years, coming up on 7 years. So there's like 160 plus bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series all year long, where we talk about new release genre films that are coming out in theaters. So if you haven't made the jump yet, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast, we would recommend doing that, because we've done over 50 of the bonus transmission at this point. There's over 200 episodes waiting for you. And speaking of which, we did have quite a few people make the jump this week. We had Dev P sign up at $5 a month. We had Sean Russell sign up, David Chiana, Brendan Murray. We had Squain sign up, Tim C, Trash Ben making his return. Welcome back, Ben. We had Jackie Baker and Paul Ryder all sign up. So thanks so much for the support. Hope you're all enjoying those bonus episodes.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
That's the one plug for the week, as always. What am I doing here? That's the one plug for the week. The other plug for the week, as always, is what is it? Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Where's my brain? I just got off of work. Leave me alone. We've done 3 or 4 episodes in like the last week and a half. You know, I'm going through it right now.
It's just
this
chaos.
Is the life of podcaster.
Sleazoids chaos over here.
But Apple Podcasts and Spotify could use your attention. Because, you know, we got a bunch of listeners over there, and I see the stats. I see you all right now listening on both those platforms. Give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And the last plug for the week, as always, is merch. If you like the poster art that based out of Toronto horror artist Trevor Henderson did for our show, you can get that put on basically anything that you guys can think of. And you freaks thought of a lot of stuff. You've bought notebooks, you've bought hoodies, you've bought coffee mugs, you've bought pillows. The link to that is in the description of this episode, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com for anyone who's interested. But that is it for the intro. Welcome back to another week. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I believe 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks over on the main feed here would have heard from us, where we would have had special guest Katie Stebbins on the show, who does a wonderful top 10 by year movie zine where she watches over 100 to 150 movies from a given year and finds some really deep cuts, and and does a whole zine and does art for it and does little write-ups. And she did one not that long ago for the year 1965, and so she brought on a 1965 pairing for us of some really dark new Hollywood rags to riches musical show business melodramas, where we talked about Robert Mulligan's attempt after To Kill a Mockingbird to take on this almost like gothic horror-y, like A Star is Born, starring Natalie Wood, called Inside Daisy Clover, which neither of us had seen. And then a very, very on the opposite side, because that's kind of like a lavish Hollywood production. On the opposite side, in the more grimy, no-budget sphere, we tackled this movie called Ratfink by James Landis, who was one of the directors who discovered legendary cinematographer Vilmo Sigmund. who shot that movie. So it's one of his early 1960s productions, and it is a rock star industry drama meets like dirty teen rebel delinquency movie meets like straight up psycho serial killer B noir about like a guy who thinks of himself as like a James Dean or an Elvis becoming a rock star and literally killing his way up the industry.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to watch. Specific, I can't remember his first name, but Hayden, I believe, is his last name. Do you remember his first name?
It was like Schuyler or Schuler or something. It was kind of a strange name.
Just to see somebody with that kind of vision and put it onto the screen is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I forgot to mention he paid for it himself. $200,000 of his own money to make himself a movie star, and Vilmo Sigmund shot it.
And just play a complete sadist. It's pretty unbelievable. And inside Daisy Clover, although tonally a little strange sometimes, the ending is honestly one of my favorites that we've talked about on the show. So
it's
check out both.
It's insane. So we haven't heard that episode. That was 2 weeks ago over on the main feed here. And then last week over on the Patreon, we went pod people mode, not podcast people mode. We talked about some classic science fiction horror by taking a look at the first two takes on Jack Finney's iconic high concept sci-fi premise, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. We did the 1956 original by the tough guy Hollywood legend Don Siegel, which was, as you can imagine, due to his reputation, a very tautly packed B-noir kind of take on the tense thriller situation of having your friends and family replaced by these emotionless alien husks. But we paired it with Philip Kaufman's 1978 version, which updated the inherently paranoid concept for the very trendy 1970s political conspiracy thriller, things like The Parallax View, The Conversation, very much having its own 70s neo-noir meets kind of goopy body horror aesthetic at a certain point. That's very stylish, but definitely very original in comparison to the Siegel version. It's doing its own thing, and also gave us one of the finest Donald Sutherland performances, which is something we kind of felt like we wanted to talk about with his recent passing. Because he's incredible in that, and he's the iconic final image of that movie for a reason.
Yeah, and specifically with the 70s version, which I think we love both, but both me and Josh lean towards the 70s one a little bit more, is because they got to have their kind of iconic and very depressing ending where it all just goes to hell and the aliens take over essentially. But I guess with the 50s one, it was one of those studio jobs a little bit where they wanted to scale it back a bit so people didn't
have everyone believe him at the last minute and they call in the FBI.
Yeah, exactly. So we're all okay. But either movie, fantastic.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard that episode, again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. That was last week's bonus episode. But moving on to this week, we are once again joined by a special returning guest, a newly minted friend of the pod, making his third appearance in just over a year. We cannot get enough of this guy. You will probably know him better for being the co-host and producer and musician, composer for one of the best podcasts currently on the air or being delivered digitally to your phone, Blowback, which has a brand new season on Cambodia coming September 20th that everyone should be looking out for. But as we've discovered on this show, along with some of our listeners here on the down low, he's also something of a sleazy cinephile himself. That guest is Brendan James. Brendan, welcome back.
Howdy, fellas. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for coming back.
Dude, we're stoked.
I didn't realize it was the third time in a year. That's awesome.
And we're making plans for more. We love them.
Well, we'll see how today. We'll see how today goes. But
and maybe the friendship ends right now.
It certainly doesn't feel like it's only been a year, but I suppose it has, because I was on for. What did we do? We did the ninth configuration and something else.
Mm-hmm. Was it?
Why am I blanking on what we did?
It wasn't Exorcist, was it? I thought it was.
No, you did that with Will.
Oh, okay.
That was why we had to. I think Brendan begrudgingly was like, "Okay, I guess I'll bring on the ninth configuration."
Oh, right. That's what it was.
But it was the sender. That's what it was.
The sender.
Oh yeah.
That was a fun movie.
That was fun, and then Noah and I came on together to do a back-to-back Cold War '80s. Red Scorpion and something.
Yeah, we did the Red 80s Dawn. Red Scare anti-communist action trash double feature. It was Red Dawn and Red Scorpion. John Milius, Joseph Zito, actual like right-wing psychos making that material. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a good one. So now we've gotten rid of the dead weight. It's just me again, and no more Noah, and we have.
I will say I did enjoy that episode because I felt like I was like, oh, it's just Noah and Brendan just fighting each other on my show. I'm like listening to Blowback, but if they were like argumentative and they didn't like script it out.
Well, this is why I'm in charge of editing it. Is I can sort of trick people into thinking we're a functional partnership.
It's beautiful. Jamie doesn't do that here.
No, just get rid of the uhs, and that's about it. Should probably cut these things down. Yeah.
Well, since then, Brendan, it's been really nice having you keep me up to date with the occasional, just in the DMs, very quietly, like, hey, have you guys seen this? I just watched this and it's like insane. He'll just send me like a movie every once in a while, and that's kind of partially kind of how this episode happened today. So, what two films are we talking about today, and why did you pair together? That was not language. What unites them in your eyes?
Okay. Well, we're doing Miami Connection, 1987, I believe. And that is I think a cult classic, an established cult classic at this point, a bizarre film that is just a wonderfully inept attempt at, I think, kind of a Miami Vice sort of martial arts Taekwondo showcase made by someone who had never made a film ever before. And it is known now for its bizarre swings in tone, plot twists, and sort of I don't know, just meandering yet well, a great soundtrack.
I was gonna say great vibes, great friends. You know, I think that's what's carried it to its reputation that it has. It actually does have a passion and behind it. It feels like.
It does. It really does. It's, I mean, from the first 5 minutes, it's a Taekwondo rock and roll band who are all best friends trying to stop drug deals by ninjas, right? Is that?
It's what I wish my life was.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a fantasy.
Pretty accurate plot description right there. Yep.
And then the second, that's about as concise as we'll get, I think, because I don't really know what happened in this movie. But in the second film will be The Stabilizer, which I recently saw at Spectacle, New York, which is a lovely, I guess they call them micro cinemas. It's a little theater that plays really wonderful and hard to find, bizarre and fascinating rarities. My friend Marissa Shepard is someone who is in charge of programming there, and she told me to come along that day for, I think, a whole day's worth of films by the enigmatic Indonesian director Arizal, is what he goes by. And I only could stay for the Stabilizer, but boy, did it knock my socks off, and that's why I DM'd Josh. And the only thing you really need to know about the film before we get into it is what my friend Marissa said to me halfway through, which is he is not doing a lot of stabilizing. And that's the wonderful contradiction of the film. So it's a great back-to-back action sort of non-Western attempts at doing Western action films by two wonderful outsider artists.
Yeah. And actually both of them, interestingly enough, more so with Miami Connection, I guess, there's only really a line in Stabilizer, but they both have this funny thing where, like you said, they're incredibly violent, but also have this anti-violent message or underlying of it all. And it's very funny when you watch the movies. So yeah, great stuff.
We'll get to that title card at the end of Miami Connection, which is one of the
greatest gags in movie history, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but no, I'm stoked. Let's jump into it because Miami Connection, I will say I've watched it. We did it as a group watch, I think, Jamie and I and a couple friends, and we just because it was like that seemed like the kind of movie for that, and I was absolutely just like floored by it, and have since went and saw it in the theater. And I have a friend who programmed it and does a Dragon Sound cover band, and they did a full set of the songs and everything, and it was sold out. It was, and I just did that a couple weeks ago, so I was like very prepared for this episode. Watched it twice in like 2 weeks, you know, so I'm good. I think I know what happens. I think I've solved it. So I'm really excited to get into it. Let's do it. Let's talk about, first up here, Miami Connection.
Friends through eternity, loyalty, honesty will stay together through thick or thin. Friends forever will be together. We're on top 'cause we play to win.
My father! I found my father! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
All right, we are talking Miami Connection, the 1987 American independent martial arts action comedy exploitation movie written, produced, co-directed, and starring real-life Korean Taekwondo school owner and instructor YK Kim as the leader of a new wave rock band, Dragon Sound, which is comprised of various ethnically diverse Taekwondo orphans / his college roommates who get into a Miami Vice-style narco-trafficking, turf war, and ultra-violent martial arts fights with a gang of Florida bikers, rival bar bands, and evil ninjas, all in the name of friendship, family, loyalty, honesty, and world peace, which we'll talk about.
And the ninjas are on motorcycles also.
Also, yeah, the ninjas and the bike gang kind of like blend together a little bit at a certain point, and they become one and the same. I think the ninjas are avenging the bikers also at one point. There is actually a little bit of confusion on that part. But to start things off, as I want to do, I think, for maybe even both of these movies a little bit, I want to reiterate that on this show, because we've done this a few times where we've had to say this up front, but we are not a so bad it's good show.
No,
it's just not really how we look at movies. It's a philosophy we don't fully, I think, buy into. If the limitations of budget or technical filmmaking skill prevented us from appreciating or analyzing a movie, we would not, I don't think, have this show. Some of our favorite things we've covered have come from underground scenes where weirdos or outsider artists, get by on sheer passion or energy, and the bizarre vision under those flawed conditions is part of the appeal for us. And of those types of movies that have that kind of reputation, I think genuinely this has become one of my favorite ones, because a huge part of this is, as I mentioned, it is largely the brainchild of a Korean-born Floridian named YK Kim, who was a Taekwondo black belt and grandmaster who opened up a series of schools in Orlando, started a martial arts magazine, and even wrote books about philosophy and self-help through fitness, and became a motivational public speaker, sharing his wisdoms that you could find in his books, like Winning is a Choice, which is the name of one of them. I need to get my hands on this. And he also briefly became a workout DVD program guy, where he helped you achieve actually Zen in your life through working out, which he called the New American Dream through fitness, where you worked on, as he puts it, the 5 kinds of fitness: physical, mental, moral, financial, and life. Those are all the fitnesses that you are going to learn from YK Kim. And I guess while promoting one of these books, and his views of the Taekwondo philosophy, as in believing it to be something that keeps you healthy, keeps you fit, keeps you strong and spiritual, and ready to overcome any physical odds or mental obstacles that come your way. He was promoting this idea on a Korean talk show, and the Korean martial arts B-movie director Richard Park contacted him, having seen it, impressed by his views, and asked him if he'd be interested in a collaboration where they could promote the ideas in a movie and get people interested in Taekwondo. And Kim, being a firm believer in seizing the opportunity, the movie was born. He put his heart and soul into finding a way to expressing that belief in martial arts craft and philosophy, and his love for his friends and pupils, and his love especially of new wave rock synthesizers, and started writing a movie that he and his friends and students could all star in and shoot essentially in their neighborhood, making it, like, I think, one of the more expensive technical backyard productions that's maybe ever been done, because this guy owned a fairly successful franchise of Taekwondo schools. So he drained his savings, he borrowed money, he mortgaged his schools, but he actually ended up having a budget of like $1 million, which is like not nothing. That's actually kind of why it looks and sounds pretty good, despite the fact that it's made by people who have never made a movie, as Brendan pointed out. And there's a lot to get into there.
And it really does just show his dedication to this passion project. I mean, to bankrupt yourself in order to make it with no real, education on how to make a film or any experience or know how. I mean,
Pure enthusiasm, baby.
Yeah, pure enthusiasm, pure passion, pure love for the game, pure love for Taekwondo. Like it, and that is why the movie eventually sells you. Is just because you can see that on screen every single time. From when you're with the band themselves on stage and they're just like lip syncing and playing as well, their instruments very poorly, but everyone's got like a smile on their face, and you can just tell they're having a blast while they're making this production, and it is what sells it the entire time.
Well, that's I think the Orlando Sentinel called it the worst film of 1988, and like many B movies, there
broke his heart.
Yeah, there are, like I said in our little intro there, this is not a seasoned director or crew necessarily, but it's one of those movies where half of the shots, maybe less than half, but shots in the film, especially in the beginning, look pretty good.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a good eye at work. It's pretty cinematic, nice, lush, blue, crispy 80s style. And then the other half the time, the camera's just kind of there, not particularly well shot. People aren't framed right. The lighting sucks. And then there's still other shots where it goes beyond that, and there's a blurry half-speed, coverage of a guy doing a big kick in the air with ADR on top. And so it really spans, it really runs the gamut. It's a style that I appreciate.
Yeah.
Because you really get the sense that certain parts of this movie were shot with one crew over a different crew, or, someone who might have had more experience and then they dropped out, or stuff was retooled, et cetera, et cetera. But the passion for the subject matter runs through all of it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the shots where they're kind of just like they place the camera, and then a lot of it is improv between the actors. I do know that because I was watching an interview. Yeah, right. It's shocking. Yeah, and that's the thing about the flow is a lot of the time.
Although there's conflicting reports. Jamie, did you watch any of these special features? I know that you watched one of the behind the scenes, but I think you might have watched the one that I watched where there's an incredible edit even in the behind the scenes documentary about it, where the guy who has co-writing credit, Joseph Diamond, who I think is the guy who plays. I'm trying to remember exactly which one he was. He's the guy who plays Jack.
Yeah.
So he kind of pretentiously in the documentary is like, oh yeah, I like read 6 million screenwriting books the second YK Kim approached me, and I was like, we're gonna come up with like a Hollywood formula that's gonna work, it's gonna sell. And then it immediately cuts to, I think, Vincent Hirsch, the guy who plays John, the lankier guy. And he goes, oh yeah, there was not a script. He was like, we were like riffing. We were just making shit up. Like there was like Tom was like the funny guy that who was Angelo, who did all the music for the movie. He was just constantly just like cracking jokes, and they would be like, that's funny, let's put that in the movie, or like there was conflicting reports even in the behind the scenes documentary on whether there was a script at all or whether there was even a set schedule. There were some people who disagreed on whether they had permits for anything that they did or not. Which is part of the appeal, that they're just shooting shit, great Florida location work that's clearly just documentary footage of them going into like a biker bar or being on a street and having a fight at 3 a.m. when no cars are going by, but part of the appeal of this movie is that it's made by and starring people who have never made a movie, and you can kind of see them figuring it out on the fly because they all want to do it. They want to be there. They're like, we all love YK Kim, we all love this Taekwondo, and this is like going to be the coolest movie ever. It's like when you and your like, it was like me when I was making friends with like my fucking like 12-year-old best buddies, and we were like, wouldn't it be cool if like we went in the backyard and I shot a clip of you guys like fighting and we cut it together so it like looked really awesome. And like that's the energy that this entire movie has, just it had $1 million budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And another funny point in those interviews is after one of the guys, I believe it's the guy that plays the lead guitar, who is Angelo, who plays Tom. He is talking about how he was actually getting really upset with either Jack or Jim, I can't remember which, because he would do these improvised lines because, like you said, all they had was basically an outline. That was it. And then they would just go. And he would say a funny line and they'd think it was great. And then they'd roll and do like the second or third take. And then one of the other actors would steal his improv line.
Would steal it, yeah.
Because they probably just didn't know the etiquette or whatever it was. And it's just like, that was also a funny thought, because they did another funny cut where they're just like, yeah, he kept just stealing my lines. No offense, Joe, but you were stealing my lines. And I thought that was hilarious. But a lot of the time, he is just like placing the camera down in these dialogue scenes, obviously tells them like where you need to be by the end of the scene. They kind of just have these funny little friendly conversations to get there. And then everything else, like the action, is incredibly well edited and well shot. And you can tell that that's a lot of the time, that's where the heart is when it comes to the actual filmmaking of it all. And the fighting, honestly, is pretty good. I believe, I don't know if it's the same guy that directed it, Richard Park, or if it's a separate guy, but the man that plays the restaurant owner, I believe, was the choreographer, and he actually even has a fight scene where he kind of gets to show off a little bit.
And he is the co-director. He is the guy. He's the one guy on set who had experience making a movie and had made like Korean like martial arts movies before and was a fighter. So there was one guy on set who could kind of push them in the right direction a little bit. But from what I understand, this also did become the YK Kim project after a while, and he was like, this is my movie. I'm putting this together. And so that's why you get, I think, a little bit, every once in a while you get like a fight moment where you're like, that actually seems like shot and cut together by someone who knows what they're doing. And then you'll see another one where you're like, what were they thinking on that framing?
Yeah, it's like the difference between this opening scene where it's like they're showing Uzis, they're showing motorcycles, they're showing ninjas, all this crazy stuff. And then later on they have like a demonstration scene specifically with YK Kim. And that seems like Kim was kind of like, well, why don't we have a scene where I can show you and also show the audience in a way these moves and kind of have a demonstrational moment for my Taekwondo schooling or whatever. So
that was are you talking about the like They Live length scene in which he's just kind of fucking around doing moves and
on
then
grass
sort of fights
outside the uni, I think. Yeah. And it feels like he's kind of, it felt more like a demonstration for his school than like a part of the movie. I understand too, he's trying to train, the people, his friends, so that they can fight as well. Then that makes sense. It's just the way that it's framed.
And they all were like
stuff.
students for him, even in like real life too. And so like this was just, part of, which is partially why the amateur fight choreography is genuinely athletic and kind of cool at the time. And also kind of charmingly clumsy at the same time, where it's like, these guys haven't done this for a movie before, but they can fight.
Yeah, and that doesn't always work, because I don't know if you guys have ever run into the McNamara brothers, these two Canadian martial arts guys, or I think they're martial arts, who made their own movie. Yeah, it was called Twin Dragon, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I know who you're talking about.
They made two of them, and in the first one, they know how to fight, but it's the most uncinematic. It's like a wide shot where everyone just falls down within like 5 seconds, because they also need to portray themselves as like the most badass guys ever who really don't need to worry about fighting because they kill everyone immediately. And it sucks. And they slow it down for like 30 seconds to like make it look more epic. But of course, there's a little bit of that in this movie too, where you need to shoot at the right, you have to like have the shutter speed, for a slow motion scene. You can't just like in the edit, just necessarily do that. And so it looks terrible, even though they know very well how to do martial arts. And then in the sequel, those guys, I think, were told, here's how you actually shoot a fight scene. It's not just doing a fight. And they kind of have a much more traditionally cinematic approach that looks better. But in this movie, the fight scenes don't look too bad. And so it's a nice sort of balance between it being kind of, as you say, a demonstration or advertisement for the guy's, career, as well as being up to par for an entertaining movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, it's not, the thing is too, is some of it is fairly fast paced and kind of believable in moments when it comes to the fighting. It's just, we've also, we've covered so much Jackie Chan on this show and everything, where it's the speed is just unbelievable.
It's hard to give people a pass sometimes after you've seen
you're like, this is
someone,
the best of the
someone
best
can do.
Yeah. But again, it's in moments, like there's a lot of moments where they do pull that off. I mean, it's not Jackie Chan level, of course, but they pull it off in this believable sense. And then there's other moments where it's a little more awkward, but again, it's so there's so much of it. Like they actually have quite a bit of choreography in every action scene. So whether or not some of it's clumsy, some of it isn't, you see how much work is being put into every scene, and you kind of just you forget after a little while some of the amateur qualities.
And also part of that awkwardness is the charm, because once again we're talking about like a really this is a production where the actors were also doing the on-set jobs. Yeah. Like I think one of the actors was production management doing. I think it was the guy who plays John, Vincent Hirsch. He was the one who mentioned that, like, he was like, I just became like the grip and like the electrician for a little while, because they were like, I don't know, you're a big guy, go like lift that light up. And like, one of them, I think it was Kathy, who like went to beauty school, became like the makeup artist, but she's like, I'd never done like makeup for movies before. And so it really is like a giant friends and family backyard movie of martial arts enthusiasts, and everyone though is taking it kind of seriously, and they clearly enjoy or at least want to be part of this thing. And part of it is all like the infectious energy of YK Kim, who apparently would get up every day, get the whole cast and crew into one of his studios and like psych everyone up with like a big like motivational speech. He'd go like Jordan Belfort mode on the mic and just like get everyone, like let's, and that was the case of, everyone just went. His motivational attitude was, they can't stop me. I don't care that I'm not a movie expert. I am Taekwondo, and I know how to express the philosophy of Taekwondo. And apparently he even told people that they thought they were going to get an Oscar at one point. And,
I love that.
and his enthusiasm and dedication and effort on display, of pulling this off is, why the end result is as charming as it is. Like part of the appeal of this movie is it's just like watching a juvenile teen boy who's obsessed with like ninjas and biker gangs and Jackie Chan movies and Miami Vice, and just being like, what if I just threw all that shit together? It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, let's
throw that shit together.
He's like, let's get every image I know from all of those types of movies and genres and just throw them together. I mean, like we said in this opening scene, it's ambitious as hell. You have ninjas, bow and arrows, kung fu, ninja stars. It's just like it's unbelievable. And
it delivers immediately. Like if you pull up this movie because a friend pitches you, I probably had this happen. Both of you have had this happen to you before, where someone's like pitched you on like that movie's crazy, man. It has this going on, and then it's like it doesn't get there until like 80 minutes in, and you're like, oh, okay, well that was great
sick,
that I sat through, and this one, it's like, no. The opening drug scene sort of looks like two different gangs from the Warriors are meeting up at like an abandoned oceanside pier that they use for like a cold open of a Miami Vice episode. They're dressed in like spirit Halloween costumes of like guy in camo jacket, guy in football letter jacket, guy in like the classic Vice suit and the sunglasses and fedora. The cocaine of the scene is hidden in a shipment of ramen, and all seems normal in this situation until a ninja shuriken just graphically nails a dude in the neck, and we get drug dealers versus ninjas just going off in the first like minute of the movie. Uzi fire going off, drug dealers having katanas like sunk into their foreheads, and blood packs being shot into their faces, arms getting cleaved like entirely right off. I think that was the most unexpected thing for me the very first time I watched it. I did not hear about how gory it every once in a while in like a very specific moment would get. And it was like, there's a guy screaming and his arm's been cut off. And the ninjas end up stealing all the cocaine and going back to their leader, Yashido, and getting reprimanded for forgetting the money. They were like,
important thing.
Yeah. And they go back to their forest dojo where they like kneel in a line waiting for commands, and or spend the rest of the movie practicing rolls and jumps and like kicks and like an outdoor greenery. But the bizarre world and that this ends up creating through just throwing everything a fucking teen kid would want to see at the screen is very fun.
Yeah, it's just like it's contagious, because as soon as you go from the action trash that you know and love in this kind of genre and that we're here for, you get right into the band stuff and the Friends Forever theme of just like this incredibly overly happy tone of like I can't remember what some of the lyrics of the song, but it's legitimately a song about being friends forever, and it's in like this new wave pop 80s.
I mean, the
genre.
most important earwormy part is friends through eternity, loyalty, honesty.
Yeah, like let's go.
Yes.
What songwriting?
You know, they're rocking back
incredible.
and forth in choreography. They're smiling from ear to ear. It's so fun.
We'll stay together through thick or thin.
Yeah, it's so positive from what you've especially from what you're used to with these trashier action flicks. Like, especially, we'll get to one with the Stabilizer. It doesn't have any of that that pure happiness vibe of it all.
This movie and the music absolutely suits it, because one of the lyrics in there too is, "We'll make our dreams come true. There's nothing we can't do," and that's like the motivating factor of how this movie got made. So like the actual infectious Friends energy of even the music and of the characterizations, that feels truthful.
Yeah, John.
The song is also pretty good as well. It doesn't hurt to say that it's a good song. It's catchy. It's not like a kind of tuneless, attempt at a poppy 80s song. It's a good song. Yeah,
absolutely. Apparently, I think it was. The lead guitarist is an actual musician. I think he wrote a lot of these songs. That's Angelo Gianninotti.
That's the guy who plays Tom, yeah.
And apparently he did the Friends Forever one, and I think it was Kim that he was presenting them to, and Kim was like, "This is great, I love this." And then he did for the second song, where I think he even it's the one where he has a solo in it and everything. He was gonna do a more like heavy metal tone with distorted guitar, and he showed Kim, and he absolutely hated it. And so he went back and he did a bunch of synthesizers instead.
He was like, okay, he likes the new wave. He does not like the glam metal. Let's go back to
I don't
doing that a little bit.
I don't want any anger. Kim was just like, I want that pure happiness that comes from the 80s new wave synthesizer. So it's just...
Yeah, although my favorite thing about the band getting introduced is it's in this opening title sequences that's literally ripped straight from, and someone had to have seen it, it's ripped from Walter Hill's Streets of Fire.
Oh, sure.
Like it's like the editing patterns, the same way it cuts between the bite. Like that movie opens where the drum beat is kind of like the rhythm of how you're getting into it. And it's a biker gang led by Willem Dafoe kidnapping Diane Lane, who's the local singer everyone loves. And it has that cross-cutting, like synthy pop rock momentum to it. But instead, it's Yoshido's drug-running ninja biker gang riding from Miami to Orlando to go sell the drugs they just stole via their contact Jeff, who is the dude with the sick beard and earring and muscle shirt combos, who rocks a bunch of crazy outfits through the whole movie. Yeah. But it's literally cross-cut on the drum beats with the 80s new wave concert footage of the band playing Dragon Sound, and that's like obviously the new house rock and roll band for Central Florida's hottest nightclub, and they perform their songs while wearing Taekwondo attire and do demonstrations in the rock act and do guitar and drum solos in their Dragon Sound like muscle shirts, and yeah, it's just it's great. And the only thing that it's missing is the biker gang kidnapping the lead singer on their way out the door to like motivate the plot, but that would be what you'd find in a more conventional screenplay. Walter Hill, maybe he's seen like an old like Western movie once before or something like that, whereas these guys were like, well, it would be weird to have the plot get motivated, so what if the brother just came into and watched them play and was like, hey, is that my sister in the band kissing the guitarist? And
we'll
then just sits in the corner drinking, getting very angry for the rest of the scene.
Yeah, I mean, like many B movies, the script is written in the form of, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. Nothing has a real causal chain to it, which is sort of a basic rule you're told to avoid, because then there's no sense of momentum in your plot. But in movies like this, it sort of adds to the dreamlike entertainment of it all.
Yeah, and it has this weird effect where you start it just because it's piling on without really having an effect after. It feels like you're getting to know them, but it's never resolving anything. Like it just feels like you're getting to know a backstory, and eventually by the end they kind of tie a neat little bow on some of these things. But it just the way that they deliver it makes it feel like a constant waterfall instead of this thing that's actually coming together. It's kind of strange.
Well, and they're just clumsy getting to it, because know that like the second that moment happens, you're like, okay, this guy clearly doesn't like that his sister's in this band. That's going to be the motivating factor of the plot. It's just they wouldn't they don't have the thought to do the economical thing, which is combine these scenes together and make this altercation happen in the club, which would be a cool visual setting for something like that to happen. Instead, we get this whole long sequence where we're introduced to who Dragon Sound is outside of being the house band at Central Florida's hottest nightclub, where they are just this, once again, ethnically diverse group of friends of orphaned roommates and University of Florida students who all look incredibly middle-aged.
This was the first moment I became confused, because I started to not understand whether or not these were ninjas or thugs.
Yes.
And they're complaining about getting fired, and I was like, did they get fired from the drug ring? Like, what is he complaining about? And then I'm like, oh, he had a gig at the same place, and they can only have one band, so now he's out. And I started to let go of any attempt at keeping track at that point.
I do like the thought that it's not just gangs that are in this kind of gang mentality. It's bands, it's friendships. It's just like these cliques are
just
really
just people
strong.
at school.
They're ride or dies. They're just ready to die for each
that's
other.
what I mean. Like, that's the first altercation. The first altercation is actually in just the university parking lot, where we meet the first major member of the band, John, played by Vincent Hirsch, who is the very lanky, goofy white dude on guitar who happens to be in the on-campus fling with the band's backup vocalist, Jane, who is Jeff's sister. And Jeff doesn't approve of their goofball antics on stage, and we get a very clumsy bit of backstory exposition where they're like, Jane, do you have any family? She's like, well, both my parents had hard lives and died, but I have a brother. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be going to this nice school or have all these nice things. And he's like, wow, that's really nice of him. And she's like, that's great, but I don't really like him. And also, by the way, let's go meet him. And also, by the way, he's involved with these really shady characters, and he's extremely jealous. And I'm sitting there going, okay,
this is all going to go well.
This is all information they could have got out, like, in an actual, confrontational scene at the club. But they're like, no, we saved it for this. So specifically, she could give you all that information, and then they could angrily roll into the school parking lot with his boys, where, like a total douchebag, he parks diagonally across the handicap spot, rocking the full camo muscle fit.
Awesome.
And he just gets out fingerless leather gloves, single saber tooth earring, and he's the coolest dude on the planet.
He is.
And he's basically like, hey, Jeff, nice to meet you. And also, where'd you find this son of a bitch? And he's a friend? And just starts beating the shit out of him, which is when all the other finally Dragon Sound members roll up, including their leader and the father figure, Mark, who is YK.
If that had happened in the club initially, as you say, it would have been tighter, but you wouldn't have been able to learn that she is at the University of Central Florida taking classes on how to make circles on the computer.
True.
Which they won a competition
listeners,
apparently.
Yeah, I was going to say, and also that some of those members went to a show and they won.
Which I'm very happy
Well,
about.
exactly. You can hear the professor go over to Jane. That's her name, right?
Yep.
You can hear the professor go over, and he says, and I quote, "Hey, Jane, great circle." So, we had a little bit of a window into what her interests are besides music, which are shapes of different sorts, or maybe just circles. But the crew shows up in a bunch of trucks, and then Jeff is in a conspicuously sporty Mercedes SL. So he's obviously like the leader, or he's high up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pretty much
and when
everybody
he
is
squares off
also
with the dragon. When he squares off with the dragon people, it's another. You guys should definitely try to drop some dialogue from the film, because there's a great exchange where he's like, "Stay away from my sister." We can't do it justice. And he says, "Stay away from my." It's the part I'm thinking of is "Stay away from my sister." And the squad goes, "Whatever you say," and he goes, "Just remember what I said." And it's like,
that's so good.
Whatever you say.
I love too the script itself with the dialogue is awkward enough. I will, and I'm not trying to throw any shade or anything, but William Ergel has a very specifically strange way of pausing during some of his lines that I was just like just fascinated by at certain moments. Like it's more disjointed, I think, than any other actor that is attempting here, and it honestly at first reads as just like kind of awkward or whatever, but then as it goes on each scene, I was just like trying to anticipate when he would do some strange
it's his
pause.
Acting style, man.
Exactly, he's just got something that I've never seen before. But it's so much fun.
Like going up against YK Kim, who is like clearly like what looks like a 40-year-old Korean man at the university, and his main personality trait is that he cares like too much about his fellow band members, because he throws his school books on the ground. And that's what he goes. He's like, "Hey, Mark, what's going on here?" Or John, what happened, man? And that's when they get into the altercation where those two go back and forth, and they end up ending that off with "You don't scare me at all. Goodbye." I was like, okay, so the scene is over.
One of my favorite parts is that he repeats "at all" as well. He goes, "You don't scare me at all. At all, goodbye." And it's just like he really needed to emphasize the "at all." It's fantastic. Right. I also like.
We can't do it justice. You definitely need to put in some of these snatches of crosstalk.
You just need to hear it.
Yeah,
the improvised nature of it. The fact that I don't care whatever that guy said in the behind the scenes, that there was no operational script in some of these scenes. It's magical.
It is. And honestly, I don't even mind the framing of this part, because it does have this funny like Street Fighter thing where both groups are facing each other and the angle is kind of on its side. And it's, I don't know. I did enjoy the shot here where you get to just, they improvise fight a little bit verbally.
Then it cuts to another argument, which is, the movie is kind of a series of arguments, really, interrupted by one very different tonal scene, which we'll get to. But then the club owner, I think, where Dragon Sound played, has fired another band. And
by the way, the club owner played by a man named Bill Young, who was apparently a local luxury vacuum salesman. And they just thought that he was like on like local commercials and shit like that. So they were like, dude, we love this dude for hyping up the nightclub.
So he's basically Philip Seymour Hoffman in Punch Drunk Love. He's like a local kind of big, blonde, kind of intimidating businessman. He looks like, he reminded me of Dauber from Coach. He had like kind of thin blonde hair, and he had big shoulders. But he fires this other band, and that argument, which is, again, painfully improvised, but it all stays
It's beautiful. It's beautiful because it's an improvised like martial arts fight as well with the previous band that he fired.
They settle it through martial arts, but it's like at that point it's not at all clear why either of these men should know Taekwondo. One is the owner of a club, and the other is a musician. So why do they all know Taekwondo?
And also that there's like an exclusive like headlining gig. Like you can't, like I've never heard of a club that doesn't have like more than one band that plays on like certain nights or something like that. So it was very funny to me that these guys are so resentful and upset that they were like, you replaced us with more popular like hip kids Dragon Sound, and how that scene starts out where they like saunter in looking like, they're a little, like they're popping their suits a little bit, and they're like, we're gonna have a friendly chat that like turns violent, maybe like in a crime movie. But then they immediately, within a second of interacting with each other, they start improv shouting at each other and like tearing off layers and just throwing punches and elbows and flipping each other.
Maybe it's like a residency at Vegas. It's like there's only one band that really gets the gig. So because it's very zero sum. It's very winner take all. This one
Dragon Sound earned it. They were hyping that crowd up, man.
It feels.
We never get to hear the other guy's song though. To be fair,
that's true.
True. Yeah. They might just shred. We really
Battle of the Bands maybe could have been used here.
I do like the thought that it's like when they roll up and they eventually have the first interaction in the street fight or whatever, band versus band. It is funny because it's not just their band; they're with other people. So it's as if like fans are that passionate about them and they came to street fight with them, or they had a really big tech crew or something. I just the thought of that was very funny to me.
That's what also confused me. There were so many people. I'm like, this doesn't look like a band unless it's polyphonic spree or
it's an orchestra,
like a Jethro Tull style jam band with a bunch of fiddlers and someone playing a timpani. It just was too many people for me to understand it immediately as a pop band.
Me too,
because even Dragon Sound only has like 5 people in it.
Right.
Well, and my favorite aspect of this early part of the movie is that, like, obviously Jeff is very upset with them over Jane. This band's very upset with them over, the fact that they took their jobs, they took their spot. But the band has like no care in the world about like any of this stuff. My favorite aspect of Dragon Sound as like the characters is that they like all of their scenes when these guys are not involved and like, you know, trying to, you know, essentially get them to fight them. It's just tender communal like hangout scenes in the most surreal fashion, alien fashion I think I've ever seen. Most of these scenes are them driving around in their convertible, where everyone in the neighborhood thinks they're awesome, stopping occasionally and eating at like one of their local, you know, diners or like burger joints. One of them is owned by the Uncle Song, who like there's a scene of him just nodding and smiling at how much they enjoy his food. And that's the guy played by the director, co-director Richard Park, who later has a great scene where he fights the Dine and Dashers in the bandanas and the short shorts. Great scene. Yes. So like that's a part of the movie. The other part is obviously them just playing, like just concert footage of them playing their new wave songs to the kids. One of which that they play in this portion of the movie is the Against the Ninja song, which is
so good.
The most on the nose lyrics where, you know, we're going to stop the ninjas from killing people and we'll even up the score.
I was sort of glazing over a little bit, and I tuned into the lyrics again, and I think there's a line where they say, you know, we will stop this evil war. And for a second I thought, oh, is it getting a little political? Miami connection. Is this like about Nicaragua or Lebanon?
No.
But I think she means literally the war against ninjas that's happening in and around the University
Orlando.
of Central Florida.
That's right.
Yeah, that's basically about it. Though there is a wonderful chant at one point by the crowd where they go, Taekwondo, Taekwondo.
Oh yeah.
Taekwondo, Taekwondo. And again, all the songs are about how awesome they are, how they're best friends, and how they will fight anyone who is mean or evil and win in that altercation, which is why it's very funny that all of the rest of the scenes are people trying to challenge them to fight, because all of their songs are about that exact situation. So those are the other scenes. The other versions of scenes, by the way, we're still going here. Splashing each other at spring break beach day. Having the noisiest makeout sessions with their girlfriends on the beach and driving around checking out all the ladies a little too aggressively.
I'm getting beat up by like 5 chicks, but it really just looks like
that's
he's
a great moment
around.
because they push him into a group of sunbathers who just take turns for like 30 seconds straight, just being like, no, you take him. No, you take him. Just keep like pushing him back and forth.
It's great. It's great boobery because as he approaches a woman, and as he is smacked around by her, he falls into a compromising position with another woman who in turn smacks him into another woman, and it's like a Rube Goldberg of sexual harassment.
Yes, and he absolutely deserved it because he has one of the worst pickup lines I've ever heard, which is, "Excuse me, madam, may I have a little kiss? Little kiss, madam, please." And I was like, absolutely slit this guy's throat.
Might as well
please.
tip your fedora while you're saying that, dude.
Someone says as they're cruising, and there's pretty decent, pan, like dolly shot when they're just for about 5 minutes just ogling girls in their car. Someone says they don't make buns like those down at the bakery. And,
some classic lines.
Filing that away. But yeah, that's so funny because it's after the heartbreaking letter scene that we'll address. It's after the heartbreaking
I'm
scene
building to this moment as one of their main hangout scenes.
But it smash cuts from this emotional scene to all of them, including the sad character from the previous scene splashing around and smiling on the beach, to their own song, Friends.
Yeah. Jamming their own tunes, wearing their own band
regard
shirts.
for... It's a wonderful disregard of any real like tonal consistency.
It's great. I love Tom too. Like they're being incredibly silly too. I mean, I sent it to you guys before we started on Discord, but he's got this great move where the camera follows him as he stands up in the convertible and is just doing like a little chest pump and everything.
He actually brags about that move making it into the movie in the documentary because he was like, I'm so glad. Like he's like, that was my signature move for like picking up ladies at the beach.
Dude,
so.
I bet he was.
It's kind of like the. It's like a little bit of the intro of Friends when they're all sort of doing their little, dance. Like David Schwimmer does some kind of dance in that. I remember as a kid seeing the credits, and I was like, oh, okay, this is fun. It's fun to see Friends, and of course, the song in this film is called Friends.
That's right.
But he's cool. I don't know. I mean. I'm thinking of other scenes as well. I do like they kind of disappear, but I like the other band. Because the one guy looks like Billy Joel. At one point, he has like a very 1980s Billy Joel outfit on, and they get beat up, I guess, at 3 a.m. when they could shoot the movie without any permit.
Yes.
And him and his co-thugs walk into the evil lair to get some help with like cartoon style bandages on their heads and slings on their arms, where there's just like a big circle of red paint.
And Jeff's hideout is like a gym.
Yeah.
Yep, it's literally a gym. It is.
Yeah,
a gym.
they have to like walk through all of his bros just like working out on their way to get to his office to go talk to him. And be like, hey, Jeff, I heard that there's like a band that you don't like. Which, by the way, he's also talking with his ninja boss about Arizal. He's like, everyone's going, we got to get rid of that damn band Dragon sound, you know? And start controlling the flow of drugs in that club again, you know? Maybe because I guess maybe that's meant to be it, that the band was like helping them move drugs through the place or something. They don't really ever address it, other than everyone just seems kind of annoyed that this band is so cool and that the band is best
you're meant
friends.
to infer. I think there's some insinuation that the reason this other band is even friends with the drug ninjas is that they were useful to them in, I don't know, like maybe the club was a place where they were helping to move the product.
I love movies that set this up but don't explain it to you. We'll talk about this next as well, but I never found out like what the narcotic detector like really was and why anyone cared that much about it. And same here. I really don't follow exactly what the narcotics element of this is, because it doesn't matter. These guys are all, what's important is that these guys are best friends, and there are people trying to ruin that. And we can't let that happen, because this is a beautiful, sensitive relationship they all have, which is why we, I think, need to address the funniest hangout scene, sequences of scenes. So it's an entire subplot of the movie, I guess we have to say, which is the thing that made me cry laughing the first time I watched the movie and has just endeared me to the movie forever, which is all of the hangout scenes actually around their house. Which is, part of it is to deliver this arc about Jim, played by this actor, Maurice Smith, who is in the process of looking for his father who put him up, who abandoned him and his mother. And it is, but the way that is delivered is in one of the strangest ways I've ever seen a film try to get that information across to you, that it comes back into play multiple times in the film.
You just have to cut to the audio. There's really
I'm not even going to say like what his monologue is. I'm actually going to explain visually what happens in this, which is that Jim opens the scene by going, "Hey guys, I'm going to the shower," and they're like, "Go for it, Jim." So he takes his shirt off and he walks into the room with a towel over his shoulder. And, John has just checked the mail and is playing this really long game of keep away with the letter from Jim. And all the other guys hear the commotion and kind of walk in. And Tom, who is obviously Angelo, also walks in, and Jack. And they're also shirtless. And one of them is also carrying around a towel. And it was my first part in the movie where I went, what is the shower etiquette in this house? Who was going to the shower? And who just got out, or like what is happening? I don't understand. But everyone is always ready to walk into any given room shirtless with a towel and having been prepared or about to check the mail. That's all these guys do in their apartment. Those are the three things that they're doing. They're hanging
boys
out.
Being boys.
They're about to get into the shower, or they're checking the mail. And that is what results. That is the series of events that results in what is Jim opening this letter and giving his very, very out of nowhere maudlin monologue, where they put onions in his eyes so that he could cry, and they had sad synth music kind of kick in, and they were like, they literally go,
it's like Angelo Badalamenti music.
It is. I actually had that written down too, that there was like a Lynch quality to it, where they were like, Jim, what's going on? Yeah, tell us, Jim. I didn't know that you had a father. I thought we were all orphans. I don't understand. And he just gives this long monologue, but I will let Jamie throw that in here if he wants to, because it is just absolute. It is hard to capture how hard this guy Maurice Smith is gunning for that Oscar.
Oh, it's awesome. It's fantastic. I will say one of the funniest...
cry. He does actually shed real tears, I think.
Well, with the help of onions, I learned from behind the scenes.
I did. There is one, and I don't know if he's just tooting his own horn, but there is a moment in that interview where he says at one point he felt like he did find it emotionally, which I think is just a great little actor's note. Yeah, I love that. But
it was when he was saying that my mother was Korean and my father was Black American. It was during that exact line.
And I have to say, the pausing of him starting to cry and then saying my mother was Korean, and that's when he starts to, as if that's the reason. I lose my fucking mind every single time I hear that line read. It's amazing.
Well, because they ask him, there's like three different people in different ways because no one has a script saying what's wrong, why are you upset, and then he walks off to his mark, a little further into the frame, and the music kicks in and it's Laura Palmer's theme, and his answer, it seems like, is my mother was Korean. And you're like, oh, okay, that's a weird way to start this.
And then he even pauses to like cry a little more, and so it makes it like that's the answer. It's the timing is incredible. It's just amazing. It's
wonderful misdirection, probably not intentional, but then of course we learn that basically the point of this scene is that it's very, very separated from like the rest of the movie, because he's not even, what they had to do here was that YK Kim, let's just say didn't have the acting chops maybe for this type of character point. So they have this like other character who's really not the lead have the emotional arc of the film, because someone needs to have it, because he didn't have the martial arts skills, so he can't be the star. But the star can't be the emotional character. So you get this like strange crowbarred in thing about this guy's dad, which comes back at the end of the film. And is again another way that
where it was his father on duty in the Korean War impregnated his mother, and then he left. And at one point he's like, she told me to find him, but I didn't like him because he left us, which is just great writing.
We covered this story in Blowback season 3 on the Korean War, so you can obviously.
Oh, hey, good plug.
No. I mean, we didn't factor this in, but it's insinuated. It's suggested that that's why. He has this situation with his dad, but and then it kind of goes away until the very end.
Right.
But
it's important that hangout quality of them constantly going to the shower and constantly checking the mail, waiting for mail from his dad, is really important. And it's really like it's such a this band is a family, and these guys, and they're going to fight for its survival against all of these forces. And Taekwondo has kind of brought all these guys together. And it started in Korea, but now it's all over the world. And they even talk about at one point that maybe the band could do a world tour. We go to everyone's home countries, and we're going to promote peace and goodwill, and everyone's going to support each other and their lack of dads, or maybe their long lost dads, whatever kind of dad they got, we're going to, Taekwondo is going to help that guy out. And that's the beauty. And the movie believes it, I think.
I also got to give it up for YK Kim in this scene, and then in some other ones too. Like, even though he doesn't have the big emotional scene where he's breaking down crying about his long lost father or anything, he does make himself be the character that consoles Jimmy a lot of the time, and it just gives that further, that
because
awesome
he's such a good guy.
The friendship and just the sensitivity of it all, and I love that. I think it's great that it's always
very
him.
Earnest. It's very
There's even a part where later on when they eventually they might meet the father, they're thinking that they actually might have found him. They're like, let's pool our money together and get you a nice suit. Like, that's the type of friendship that we're talking about here. It's almost out of a Disney Family Channel or something like that.
I know, and that's why you don't want to see it get torn apart. You don't want to see Jeff and the band be like, we are going to just kill these guys because they're best friends and because they're an awesome band, and they deserve to get killed for that. So and that's what results in most of the action of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The only other scene besides is the ending sort of climax of action, which goes back to the action side of things. The only other scene that I recall sticking out to me is the scene where they discuss their touring schedule for about 7 to 8 minutes, where one of the guys, the tall guy, says, "Hey, I know what we should do. We should go all over the world to our respective, like where our parents are from, and then." Open schools in each of these places and do concerts. I guess they kind of hint that it will solve world peace. But there's a great exchange there. This is between, I don't know what their characters' names are, but this is between the tall guy that Jane is dating and the Israeli guy, who we learn his nationality from this conversation about everyone's different One guy's Irish.
These are
you know,
famous
obviously white
characters,
kid.
John and Jack. Thank you very much, Brendan.
Sorry. Yeah, of course. And John and Jack are talking, and one of them's like, "Yeah."
Now, which one is which? Tell me on the fly right now.
John is the boyfriend who's tall,
Nice. Nailed
True.
it.
and Jack
And he's Irish.
Jack is the
so he
You're
wants to go
allowed
to
to stay.
Ireland.
He wants to go to Ireland, but don't care who says what. But John says a tour. It'll be a tour of the world. And the other guy goes, "What kind of tour?" And John goes, "A world tour." And it's, again, just this like almost
It's just incredible
almost
writing.
just like hypnotic circular dialogue that has you. I just watched Cure. I saw Cure again the other day. It was screenings in New York, and it's like when the guy
Great
in
movie.
Cure. Yeah, it's like when the hypnotist, the disciple of Mesmer in Cure, will ask someone, "Who is that?" And he'll go, "My wife." And he'll go, "Who is your wife?" And just start the cycle of hypnotism that leads to someone murdering their colleague. That's what some of the dialogue unintentionally turns into in this film.
It's so true. I didn't think about it that way.
It is just constantly explaining like the line before it a lot of the time in just a different way. It's very funny. That was one of my favorites.
Or just saying just completely inconsequential things like during that first altercation with the band, which is the previous band who get, basically who got their ass kicked by the nightclub owner is tailing them behind in like these like neon slick streets. Like it almost looks like very briefly, they're like, we're in The Driver or we're in Thief or something like that. And it triggers the first big sort of ensemble fight. And it's like this warrior style gang altercation where Mark gets to go like Jackie Chan mode and first unleash like all of his martial arts skills, and guys are like trying to rock like bats and chains against him, and he even delivers the very famous Jackie line, the "I don't want any trouble," to their claims that Dragon Sound caused them to lose their jobs and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's Tom in the back with the mustache and the mullet, who as they pull up to like 20 cars with guys with bats and chains stepping out of it, and Tom just goes, "Well, that doesn't look like the welcome wagon." And I was like, "Good one, man! Nailed it, dude." That was definitely
like even their responses to things like that are very almost innocent and kind of like naive compared to all the violence that they eventually dish out. It's very funny.
Yeah,
that way.
because it's rather tame. Well, no, it opens with a guy getting his arm cut off, but the actual band. They're not.
The band's
using,
not trying
like,
to kill
swords.
anyone. The band's just trying to like knock people out and like defend themselves. Well, they at first,
until the end.
Hey, now they get pushed into doing that.
Yeah.
They're
Sometimes
world peace until they get pushed too far. Okay?
A man has its limits.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's understandable. Should we get to the ending? I guess the climax of.
Well,
where all the roads
there
meet?
is. We are pretty close. There is one thing I liked just in the middle of all of this, where there's a great moment where Kim is talking about Taekwondo and he's saying like just how good it is for people, how it's a beautiful art form, it's good for exercise, it's good for community, all of this. And as he's doing it, he's actually narrating it over them playing on a stage and performing Taekwondo at the same time. And there are moments like that I really enjoyed the choices of editing and filmmaking that kind of bring home that just the love for what he's bringing to the screen, and why he's making this movie. So I thought that was a really cool moment.
Yeah, and there is one action beat section that we should talk about too, because there's there's the big fight where they do. Yes, I was gonna say, because there's the big one where they fight the band in the middle of the night, and then they also, I think that's when they go to Jeff, and Jeff meets them at the railroad tracks, which is where he leaves the letter on their car, and they almost get into like a West Side Story like crew like rumble, where it's like they got like sticks and poles, and they're just beating the crap out of each other. And there are some funny beats of like, I think John is the one who does like the parkour chase like through the train at one point, and he gets cornered on like a dirt mound where just one at a time, a line of guys just starts flying at him, and he just one punch combos his way through every single one of them until one is like hiding behind the dirt mound and then tries to like appear to like breakdance fight him for a second before he just like roundhouse kicks and knocks them out. But they're basically getting into all these altercations with both the band and Jeff's gang, and it's really pissing them off. And also the cops show up at one point, which, by the way, apparently the actual crew and cast got chased around by the cops around Florida a bunch of times too, because they were just shooting these around Central Florida, and they thought they were just like having gang wars around Central Florida. But there's this amazing. There's this. It's so true. If I saw that, I'd be like, "What the hell is going on? Look at all those fingerless leather gloves. Those guys can't be up to any good over there."
It would be funny to think
killing
it's real
Billy Joel in broad daylight.
Yeah, it would be funny to think it's real from a distance, and instead of just like brawling, they're actually doing Taekwondo and Kung Fu and everything. You'd be like, wow, they've really evolved here.
It's lucky that the cooler heads prevail, because that almost could have been a Naked Gun situation, which is one of my favorite lines in the Naked Gun, where the mayor says, "You killed 3 actors," and he's like, "Well, when I see a bunch of men stabbing a guy in broad daylight, I shoot the bastards," because he was watching Shakespeare in the Park do Julius Caesar. So it's good that they weren't too convincing in their gang war.
No, they got up and drove away as fast as they could, and also got involved with some biker gangs, which is the part that I wanted to mention, which was the amazing cut from the guy who's playing the ninja leader, Yoshido. And there's a great sequence right before Tom gets kidnapped where he's just riding around with like an actual Florida biker gang, and he's like rocking the leather jacket, he's got the sunglasses, and he's got the scarf. And there's a great, again, one of the songs on the soundtrack, everyone's trying to be a tough guy. You're messing with the tough guys. And he's clearly just like a Korean dude hanging out on like an actual Florida biker bar, where apparently they just shot that footage on location at documentary style, and they just offered to buy all of the bikers beer. And just said, okay, now you guys are like arm wrestling, and now you guys, there's like women topless. There's like a guy putting like a nail through his nose and all this stuff. And they were just like, this was just footage that the cinematographer was like, I guess we'll just go into the biker gang and shoot that stuff, which they're doing while Jeff is kidnapping Tom on one of their many drives to the diner, which they all just go in and start eating, and he just gets grabbed while they're all eating lunch. And then they strap him up, and they do, I think, the first set piece where they start, Dragon Sound actually full on starts killing people, which is like this nighttime neon rescue set piece where they are, like stealthily chopping dudes unconscious, and then they're pole fighting, and there's like these gushing neck wounds coming out of them. And, there's a whole sequence where Mark versus Jeff, I think that's when that fight actually happens, right?
Yeah.
They're fighting with like spiked rods and running up to a platform where he falls to his death, like trying to knife fight his pole for some reason.
Yeah.
And then he just dies, and the ninjas go back to Yoshido, and they're like, "I'm sorry, boss, but your brother Jeff is dead. He was killed by Dragon Sound. We must kill Dragon Sound now. They will not escape the Miami Ninja." And that was the first part of the movie. Brendan, you were talking about the first part where you got confused. I was trying to figure out if Jeff was like actually his brother, or if they just meant like his his
like
best buddy,
just good buddies,
his compatriot.
But or if they were trying to introduce a familial melodrama aspect where they do have a flashback of Yoshido and Jeff like smiling and making deals to get rid of the band from earlier and all that kind of stuff.
I guess it could be the similar thing of like it's a disconnected family like the band has, where they're not actually related, but because of their circumstance they felt like brothers, that kind of thing. I felt like that might have been what it was.
Well, that is what leads to the very passionate response, which is why I wanted to contextualize that, because it's so important that you understand the exact flow of this movie. That's so important to
why
how this
Kim
movie
decides
functions.
to kill.
That's right. Yoshido is like, look, that's why they did some murder. Dragon Sound did do some murder, and that is also why Yoshido sends the ninjas after them, and what really does extend, what takes it into the finale. Because at the time after they rescue Tom and kill Jeff, I think they think the movie's over, because they didn't even really know Yoshido. They didn't know the ninja shit, really.
Yeah. That's what's so weird about it. It's like there's 2 movies here where it starts. It honestly could have maybe worked out this way, where it starts with Yoshido, right? He's the guy who says, "You forgot the money." He's the boss at the beginning, right? So you have Yoshido doing like really nasty stuff, like, guns and Uzis and chopping off people's arms. Then we enter the Jeff-John conflict. Jeff and John and Jack, the most just anodyne names possible. The Jeff, Jane and John conflict
Mark.
of a band.
There's one M in there.
You're right. And that's like most of the movie, and then there's a little bit of melancholy there with Jim, his
Jim,
dad's
that's
story. Right. Jim, Jeff, John, and Jack. but then at the very end,
we're gonna figure this out.
After Jeff is dispatched with, you're kind of like, you've forgotten all about Yoshido. You're like, oh, that was like another movie I saw the other day. And
I'm all invested in Jim's dad at this point. Like, I'm done with that shit. Like, we're back hanging out in the house. They're like writing songs and working on homework. And I think that's where the great scene is that Mark starts shoving a grape into every single mouth in the room, which is like a whole minute long scene of him just taking a single grape and going up to every cast member and just making them eat a grape. And that's when Jim goes out to the mailbox, which I want to reiterate, in a wide shot and pan of him going to get his letter from the mail. And he is once again shirtless with a towel. And he goes, my father, I found my father. And lets out a high pitch, oh my God. And everyone inside hears this and runs along outside. And I want to reiterate once again, every single guy is either shirtless or Tom actually comes out shirtless with nothing but a towel on. And I was like, once again, I couldn't have actually crafted a better gag. It has to be deliberate that all of these guys are coming out shirtless, and they all are so excited to be like, Jim, you found your father. That's incredible. You know, best buds. I can't believe it. They all like lift him on their shoulders like they're doing like a he's a jolly good fellow in slow motion. Like, we found his dad. And then I think that's when they dress him up in the suit and they're like, we're going to go meet your dad and drive you to the airport to go meet your dad. But those pesky ninjas, they didn't know that they were going to meet Jim's dad, which is a really important thing for them. And the ninjas are like, no, we are going to stop this right now. We are going to fight you, which triggers the big final climactic fight of the movie. Apparently in a really horrible, swampy location that was just super hot and had insects biting them left and right, which is why actually
it's production value.
It does.
It looks like a jungle.
It does. That's also why it's mostly, though, Mark and John, YK Kim and Vincent Hirsch, because they were the two Taekwondo guys who I think were most committed to the movie, and because Vincent Hirsch was actually a student of Kim's who actually like says that like Kim like changed his life and his whole philosophy and psychology about life. And so these were the two most committed guys to be like, yeah, we will jump into the swamp for like a few hours and have our just skin ripped to shreds by insects and just scream and fight. And so that's what, and apparently YK Kim, I think, is the one who mentioned that they both just like in between takes were just like taking swigs of Jack Daniels like going crazy.
Dude's
just
rock.
Fighting every single one of these ninjas in a swamp. And Jim gets his chest sliced open, which they cut back to like 3 different times to send home the severity of the Jim.
Oh yeah, they go like full slow-mo with the screams and everything, and I do like that he's in his newly bought suit to go meet his father, and that's what they're slicing up just to add a little bit more emotion to it. Like, come on
so
now,
painful.
baby. I love too that, I mean, the fighting in this is actually pretty genuinely impressive. One, because they're in this real location and it would be painful to do some of the stuff they're doing on this rough dirt ground. And then they have a lot of great moments where like John actually gets some action hero moments where they have a shot where he takes off his shirt after like stabbing a dude and screaming into the void. It's pretty awesome. Like, he's just going Rambo,
squirting blood into like his eye after he like stabs a ninja.
Yeah, it's full on of avenging my friend mode, and the violence just gets completely ramped up. This is where you start seeing more slicing, just more consecutively, I guess, and you do see the band
they steal the katanas
people
from the ninjas, right? While they're screaming and howling like animals, and they just start gutting them. They start twisting the blades around. They start like impaling them while screaming. They're slashing their backs open. One ninja gets a katana straight across the face, and there actually is like a gory makeup close-up of like
It's chunky.
Splitting his face open. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it looks like Friday the 13th, the final chapter. All of a sudden, like, this movie has been, as we've repeatedly stressed, about friends and like a little bit of danger, but mostly it's my friend's brother being an asshole, and he knows Taekwondo. Taekwondo famously, not a ton of like face lacerations at play. But then at the end, it just pops off.
Yeah, it's pretty
violent.
unreal. And also, this is where the apparently they had an original ending, which is like what most people I think saw when it was originally brought to theaters. And then he spent all these years reworking it so that it would actually get purchased. And that's where we have the ending with the father meeting them at the hospital and Jim is okay because Jim was supposed to die.
Okay, so what I think it was is that there was a pre-release version that you're referring to, which was actually not released, but it was not released because...
It was what he was bringing to the people so that they could buy it, and then they were like, "We're only going to buy it if you change."
That's what it was. It was the one. Yeah, YK Kim took that apparently to the Cannes Film Festival looking for buyers. He just took it to like the distribution floor where you can like go with your little pamphlets and like try to sell distributors on a movie. Mm-hmm. And one distributor came up to him, saw the film, and told him that if he like reworked the ending and tightened up the edit in a couple spots, that he would help them distribute it. And so that's why they came back like months later or maybe like even like a year later and reshot the ending. Which
is really interesting because apparently the fight between the white ninja and Kim is one of the re-edited things and something that he reshot because Jim was supposed to die and the bad guy was supposed to just get away. And so they were going for like a real melancholic ending where
that's downer.
And it's kind of interesting just based on what they've done prior, which is just focus this so much on the friendship and the love for each other. And then that's how it ends. You'd be like, oh my God, that's unbelieving.
And we know that Yoshido doesn't give a shit about friends because he has that one ninja who comes up to him after they've just like viscerally annihilated every ninja in the gruesome detail over and over again while screaming at the top of their lungs. All of our sweetheart best boys who were just lifting their buddy up like he's a good fellow. They're like, I can't believe this is what they're doing. And the one ninja goes, boss, everybody's dead. Like he crawled his way there everyone. And Yoshido just fucking chops his head off, full on like neck slice. You see the head pop off, you see the blood spurt out, and then he just laughs maniacally and is like, okay, I'm gonna fight Mark one-on-one now, which is the reshot fight that they do, which it is funny to me because I am now curious if the section where they just like practice that really strange black belt workout session was also a reshoot because they incorporate all of the choreography of like they teach him how. Like it's where he's doing the Bruce Lee screams, but it's also where they teach him how to, I think, disarm a knife with a kick and then also do a reversal with a knife so that it, swings back around into the guy, which is the exact move he uses on Yoshido. So it's interesting to me that weirdly enough, the movie feels like they knew that they needed to kind of like set that moment up. So it felt a little bit more dramatic, even though it does honestly just kind of feel a little unnecessary. What the movie really needed is for the nose grabbing with his toes
to be the big move
to come back into play, because that's the most baffling moment of the workout session is when he just like uses that move on a guy. And he also uses it at one point during one of the band performances where he uses it on like Jim, and Jim actually looks a little uncomfortable that his nose is being grabbed by YK Kim's toes.
Apparently that was improvised, so he didn't know that he was going to do it.
It looks like it. He looks uncomfortable that his nose is in between that man's toes.
That's very funny.
I thought it looked like he was having kind of a good time with it. Maybe my own projection.
Maybe a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, you know.
Confusion, but generally having a good time.
Intrigue,
but,
you know?
Yeah, like it is kind of impressive, honestly. And the fact that he does it 2 or 3 times, I was thinking he was going to lead it into the finale. But I do still like that he does a callback. And I do think it is a reshoot, Josh, now that you mention it, just because when I look back, it is framed. Those 2 fighting scenes are framed in very similar ways compared to the ones that I think Richard Park probably was more involved in.
Yeah, they also look more like overexposed than just like on like a green lawn somewhere.
Yeah, so I think that was Kim's work. But honestly, they still come off pretty fun. The demonstration's a little, just kind of flat, but I think it's just because
I wouldn't get rid of it. It's baffling.
Oh no,
but
yeah,
great.
I like it a lot for sure. But yeah, I think this this ending is, I don't know. I don't think the really depressing ending would work just given all the vibes we've had before. So I kind of like that this just, makes excuses to have the very, neatly wrapped up ending that it does, but.
It does explain, though, the hilarious transition from that final set piece where they just, again, gruesomely murder like a dozen people more than that by lunging and swinging and screaming at the top of their lungs, just going full animal mode. And then the romantic synths kick back in, and there's these slow motion dropped frames of the howling, even after like all the ninjas are dead. And they're still just like stuck in this like hysteria, like they can't turn it off or whatever. And then very awkwardly, it's like now they're back in the car driving Jim to the hospital, reassuring him that he's going to be okay. And I was like, I don't know how we got from one moment to the other, because even just Vincent Hirsch's performance of like the slow motion screaming that he's doing versus him in the car, like looking back at Jim, it's okay, man. We're going to get you there. We're going to get you there in time, man. Like, don't worry. Yeah. And then you have the beautiful ending.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's incredible.
And Jim talking to his own son too, where he's like, Mark, or he's talking to Mark first, because he's like, Mark, I don't know how I'm going to make right what I did wrong. I almost lost Jim for the second time, but because of you, he's alive. And Mark is, saying, "Oh, Jim's my brother. I'd do anything for him." And they roll him out on the wheelchair where he sees his friends again, and he meets his father for the first time. And he gets one of the greatest lines I've ever heard, which is, "Your friends really care about you. And now I really care too."
Yeah, as if he did not give a fuck before.
I did not, and now
so funny. Yeah, it's true. It's very funny.
And no one's gonna mess with our bands again. We're all safe. Everyone, let's go home. Story's over. We nailed it, guys.
Oh, I love that line.
Leading to
no one's
one of the greatest, as we alluded to, one of the greatest title card endings to any movie that has ever happened, which is only through the elimination of violence can we achieve world peace, which comes up about 90 seconds before the lead characters were like chopping arms and slashing faces and chopping heads off of all of the various ninjas who were trying to murder them.
It's so funny because the reason they did this too, like this wasn't originally in the messaging or anything. I mean, it's in their messaging in general because Kim is a very like he loves the idea of peace and all of that. But it's
well, that was the Taekwondo thing, right? Like that was I actually think it might have even been a note from Richard Park, because Richard Park again got this movie in motion by listening to him explain his Taekwondo philosophy about, how it keeps him fit, how it keeps him, healthy, how he's all about spreading goodness to the world and keeping everyone just, really physically fit and happy. And that's what that's how we're going to achieve peace. Like that was the message that got Park interested in making the film. And then they kind of realized partway through the movie that they were like, wait a second, is our movie actually communicating that message?
Yeah.
we maybe had a little too much fun constructing up action scenes where we gruesomely murder people left and right. Whoops.
It's so funny that they actually put that for the very idea, like, because that was the joking idea I had when I first watched it. I was like, they got overzealous a little bit and had to throw that message on there, and that is the reason why they did it, and that's just so funny. I love it. That's so great.
It's so good. Like they were like, yeah, we've kind of strayed away from the message of Taekwondo, and we just had too much. we got a little too gleeful with the Hangout martial arts rock star movie, and as a result. And what's funny is like it's you as an audience member do too. Like you get such whiplash. I've never heard like one of the loudest theater reactions I heard this year was people responding to that coming up at the end.
Yeah.
What I also love is that when Jim gets rolled out in the hospital, if you really look, when everyone gets up to welcome him, his dad doesn't give a shit. Like his dad is completely disinterested and bored looking in that moment. And it just adds to at this point he's supposed to give a shit. And he still kind of doesn't look that interested in his son.
It's one of and also just the freeze frame of all of them, like just happily getting out of the hospital and everything like that. It's just so beautifully wrapped up.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, everything has been covered at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're pivoting towards the reductive rating round on this one honestly gets the 4 for me, and honestly, it's like kind of a high 4. This is my third time watching it. I have had a blast with this one every single time. Again, it is like just watching some juvenile kid who loves ninjas and biker gangs and Streets of Fire and Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee movies and Miami Vice, and was like, I don't care that I don't know how to make a movie. He literally said, I don't care that I'm not a movie expert and I've never made a movie before. I'm going to do this thing. And just through sheer passion and energy and earnestness, by this real life Taekwondo instructor turned motivational self-help fitness DVD guy and all of his backyard cast and crew of friends and family and students. And they were like, we are going to get this thing made. And that kind of grimy lo-fi quality is something that I, enjoy about it, even though like there is some pleasing qualities about the way that it's shot and the way that it's been scored. It's not quite as like, I guess, gritty as something like Deadbeat at Dawn, but I kind of put this as more like the upbeat, like pop rock cousin of like a movie like that. That's what it kind of feels like for me. And it's just, I love the idea of 80s low budget ultra violence being dished out by orphaned Taekwondo rock stars who are, again, perpetually shirtless and heading towards the shower and checking the mail and just doing all of this in the name of friendship. And also because the production model was, resulted in having so much real friendship, it bleeds through. It becomes infectious. I think it powers through. I think if this was made in like a cynical way, it would be more unpleasant or it wouldn't work. But everything
like
that's
Samurai
awkward,
Cop 2 sort of thing.
Exactly. But everything that ends up being awkward or a limitation or even incompetent about the movie does just become charming and fun and a quality that makes you like the movie under these specific conditions. And yeah, it's also very funny to me, once again, that they got so distracted making a super violent, awesome movie where they chop ninjas' arms off and gash their faces open, that they only realized at the very end that maybe gorily chopping up a bunch of people in a swamp isn't really stating the spiritual message of Taekwondo that they intended to promote, that they do such a good job of promoting throughout the rest of the movie, where it's just a bizarre, surreal hangout movie of best friends who are also the coolest people ever, who everyone loves, who are in a sick band, and there's just evil people who want to tear them apart and who don't understand how cool they are and don't want to be friends with them, and those are all and they kill them all for that purpose, for that reason, which is awesome, which is why this movie is filled with so many great accidental gags that just speak to the pure joy that clearly these people had making this movie. When they sing "We'll make our dreams come true, there's nothing we can't do," I wholeheartedly believe all of these people. And also just the most polos, jeans, and fingerless leather gloves I think I've ever seen in a single movie, which is kind of I don't know, that's got to be there's got to be some record they could have in there for that one.
A lot of different drip.
Yeah, and again, despite maybe having questionable dramatics, line deliveries, things of just any kind of script, there's a lot of stuff to like on an actual competency level as well. There's some great neon colors. There's the actual permitless Florida location work is actually kind of awesome. Like, I love the biker part that they just go to. Yeah. I love the swamp that they find at the end. That was actually like harsh condition wise. And once again, the fight choreography, despite being clumsy and done by people who have never done it for a movie before, it is actual athletic fight choreography. These guys are putting in the work. Vincent Hirsch just said this whole movie was one of the best workouts of his entire life. And so like that quality is great. And I do love the soundtrack, featuring actual concert footage of them playing all of these songs. Although I guess they're all just kind of limp syncing it. So maybe it's not actual concert footage, but
feel the passion though.
It's there, and the songs are good. As Brendan said, they're actually pretty good songs. I like listening to them. Friends through eternity, loyalty, honesty.
Yeah, it's I agree. This is a banger. 4 out of 5, absolutely. I think it's very funny that at the end of it all, it's kind of just a coincidence that they take down a drug lord and like a drug ring. I think that's just funny. The fact that the bad guys are actually kind of throwing themselves into the good guys' lives as opposed to the good guys trying to stop them in any way is a funny thought, honestly. And yeah, I love the themes of friendship. I think they nail that, and it's such a strange thing to mix it with an incredibly violent movie, but somehow it works. And I do like that, in a sense, the characters have kind of a trajectory in which they're trying to be less violent in the first half of the movie, and just as it goes, they get more and more violent because they just have to kind of reciprocate whatever they're receiving from the bad dudes. So yeah, I think this is great. I love Kim's energy. Everyone is obviously having a blast on this, and that's just so much fun to watch. Yeah, soundtrack's great. Highly recommend. 4 out of 5.
I echo everything you guys just said. It's the sort of innocence of someone who has all the necessary passion and sort of, not to be condescending, but kind of childlike appreciation. Childlike is good. Childish is bad. Childlike appreciation for what movies can be that makes this, I guess 4 out of 4. To me, I don't know. I mean, when it comes to stuff like this, I'm not going to be one of those people who's like complaining about rating systems. But to me, is this a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5? I don't know. It's great. Yeah. It's great. And one of those reputations that's well earned. There is a little bit of a, as you guys probably well know, a cottage industry of now trying to sort of elevate as many films as possible into like an undiscovered cult masterpiece of so bad it's good, as you suggested earlier, Josh. And I'm okay sometimes with the so bad it's good idea, but a lot of the times people are, just trying to feed the beast. Yeah. And stuff like Birdemic or whatever. It's right. Like I don't take that. But Miami Connection is a truly great discovery that deserves to now be, rewatched and appreciated, and have a bunch of people over and watch it. It's great. And
I mean, it is crazy that like someone involved in at Draft House or like Fantastic Fest was someone who like bought the print just on a whim and was like, I guess this actually deserves to get re-released, and now it has annual screenings in cities, and everyone gathers around and admires the trashy purity and scrappy positive attitude of the entire thing. And Dragon Sound goes around playing, like live shows sometimes. And yeah, and it's just one of those things where like, sometimes in the cases where people elevate movies like these, I find that the things that go wrong with them, or the things that end up being bad or incompetent about them, don't add anything. And this is one where I find when this movie goes wrong, or when you think that they messed up somewhere, it goes wrong in just the weirdest, most delirious ways that are just circle back into making it just even more fun and more appealing and more about friendship and more corny and more and just everything. It's a wonderful like student grindhouse film just made by a DVD workout guy who somehow had the money to put into this thing
by bankrupting himself. God bless
I hope
him.
he made some of that back. I mean, I'm sure the DVDs and the Taekwondo schooling eventually worked out.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to wrap it up here for Miami Connection. We're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about The Stabilizer. Stick around. All right, we are back and we are talking The Stabilizer, the 1986 Indonesian B action movie directed by Arizal, written by Teddy Armand and John Rust, and starring New Zealand low-budget action star Peter O'Brien in his debut role as an American vigilante cop, Peter Goldson, aka The Stabilizer, who travels to Indonesia on a mission to violently hunt down the evil drug smuggler Greg Rainmaker, who raped and murdered his fiance in one of the most baffling scenes I think I've ever seen in a movie, and has also kidnapped a scientist who has invented a narcotics detector that threatens the entire trade of drug pushing.
Yes.
I think that's loosely what the plot is. The actual movie is just nonstop gunfire and explosions and cars flipping. More money behind this, I think, than I kind of expected of it. But this is our first time talking about the incredibly prolific Indonesian action filmmaker who goes only by Arizal, who between 1974 and 1994 put out anywhere from 2 to 4 movies a year. So often managing a year where he went as high as 6 movies in a year. He apparently started out his career in the world of caricature artistry and cartoons, even at one point working as an assistant at Disney Animation, before becoming a low-budget action filmmaker who specialized in high-octane cartoon action revenge movies that were so ridiculous they became something of a staple for underground bootleg VHS junkies, essentially, which are the people who have started this auteurist project and kept this alive, and started screenings at Spectacle Cinema, Micro Cinema, for Brendan to go and watch and go enjoy. But from what I understand, his 2 biggest movies outside of what we're talking about today were these Christopher Mitchum vehicles, one called American Hunter from 1988 and another one called Final Score from 1986 as well, which had, listen to these alternate titles: Strike Commando, Elegy of a Massacre, An Army of One. Every single one of these titles was like, trying to get that American revenge action cliches getting. And almost every single movie, I mean, this is an exaggeration. I should read more of the descriptions. I think I clicked at random 3 or 4 of the movies to get like a gist of what the descriptions were. Almost every single one of them was like some rich guy raped and murdered a guy's wife or kid, and he teams up with a sexy lady ninja of some sort, and they go and kill him. Like the one about Final Score was the exact same movie, but he's a Vietnam War vet, and the guy who attacks his family is an Indonesian tech bro. Okay. And other than that, it's, from what I could understand, it's the same movie as The Stabilizer. So yeah, his canvas, needless to say, was the American exploitation, like action revenge cliches. Yeah. And
it was his whole Bronson move. Come on, what are those movies?
Death Wish.
Yeah, Death Wish. Yeah, the Death Wish move.
Yeah, but his brushes, his very specific brushes that he used and paints that he used were just cars and fireballs and muscles and bullets, and how many can I get in the most overstimulating and chaotic fashion possible, whether it makes sense or not. And that's kind of the beauty of this thing, and also why it got a stateside release by Lloyd Kaufman and Troma, because that's exactly the audience they're looking for.
And people do seem like, just for this side of filmmaking, like these really trashy underground action movies, it seems like he's really respected. Even the ratings I see in general are pretty high when it comes to this.
Dude, and he's getting cinema series. Brandon, you watched this at a cinema series.
That's correct.
a retrospective of Arizal.
That's awesome.
And people were there all day. It was all Arizal all day, and like I said, I only had time to stop in for one. I wish I'd been able to stay. I've heard the other ones were great as well. I don't recall what the whole slate was, but you can. I'm sure Spectacle NYC, if you go to their website, they'll list them in case you want to look them up, listeners at home. But yeah, it was great, and to say just a little bit, I mean, it was as much fun as I've ever had, in a theater. People were having a great time. There's even some moments in this one, which I'm sure we'll mention, that are kind of grotesque, particularly the animal violence. But then,
oh God,
like even with that, something so funny or out there would be happening before or after that there was never like a bummer moment. And it was nonstop. It's a very oddly paced film too. So it's not as though the film was paced so well that everyone couldn't rip themselves away. It was just that, much like Miami Connection, it was contagious. The atmosphere of the film itself was contagious, and you really felt like it was a treat to be able to, appreciate something like this that, if things had gone a little differently, would have been buried, in the history of all these B movies that come and go,
Yeah.
I do like a movie that like just immediately sinks you into like the atmosphere of like letting you know what exactly it is that you're in for. Like I knew from the opening seconds that I was going to like this movie when it was the pulsing and pounding synths hit. A scientist named Professor Provost picks up the phone, and before he can even have his conversation, a dirt biking goon bursts through his wall and window in slow motion, unlocks the door, and opens the door from inside so his mafia messenger turned drug smuggling boss of the Golden Triangle gang, Greg Rainmaker, can walk in, which I want to highlight up front here. He's played by an actor named Craig Gavin, kind of looking like our boy Will Menaker a little bit if he had like a pimp walk, like limp going on.
He's got a little bit of like Paul McCartney, Will Menaker, kind of hybrid.
Yeah. And he does it so that he can walk in his all white suit and immediately demand that the scientist give him the narcotics detector and the formula, which are things we never find out exactly what they are, but we assume they are bad for the drug dealing business. I mean, narcotics detector sounds self-explanatory. What I mean about the specifics is like how that actually, like, is it just like a robotic like dog sniffer? Like, is that?
I don't
like,
think we ever see it. Do we ever?
Yeah, I don't even.
No, we never see it. I have
device.
no idea what it is. We just know that it's bad and the bad guys want it, and they are going to break everything in the entire movie in order to get it. They start by being instantly, they're like, we're going to break every object in this room, in this laboratory. We're going to take the dirt bike. We're going to run over tables. We're going to break beakers. We're going to break vases. We're going to do donuts and pop wheelies through your laboratory and then blow it up with dynamite until you tell us where the narcotics detector is. And immediately, like that's the movie. I was like, okay, I understand what we're going for.
I'm with you, Josh, that as soon as, you could settle in, you hear the music, it's got all the trappings. Like, okay, this could be fun or it could be next level. And when Will Menaker says, trash his lab, and they don't like just tear a shelf down or start, roughing things up, when they just boot up their motorcycle and like ride over a table as the way to do that, I immediately was like, okay, this
I understood the logic of the movie at that moment.
Correct. It's a great way to establish your tone. You're just like, this is what you're going to be dealing with. Even when people are inside a space, inside a house or a location, dirt bikes can still come inside and just cause havoc. And I'm like, that's a great thing to set up. What I think is hilarious is the added detail of they have the dirt bike guy go through the window, and then he starts to kind of, threaten him or whatever. But then they have a second guy that actually kicks more of the window and crawls through it after that. And I thought that was the funniest shit ever, because it was just like, why? Like, I guess
where are you going, man?
Yeah. It's funny for someone else to then not use a dirt bike and just kind of crawl over and awkwardly open the door for Victor, or I guess Rainmaker, whichever one it was at the point. Like even that was hilarious to me. So these small little details adding up really set the tone very well.
Needless destruction.
Yes.
100%. And also that everyone gets to witness, because we meet the scientist's daughter, Christina, who pulls up to the gate and arrives and yells dad just in time for the explosion to go off and the incredibly cheap knockoff To Live and Die in LA theme song, which is like, AJ. I have to admit. Yeah, it's so blatant. It's so blatant. I was like, this is Wang Chung all the way. But it's the stabilizer, baby.
Yep.
And
where we meet our leads, our macho men and our badass gals.
And I will say, so we cover a lot of dubbing on this show. We love Italian horror. We love Italian horror. That you can't love Italian horror. And I actually have talked to Jamie about this multiple times off podcast. I don't know if we've ever talked about it on the podcast, that I've actually stopped being able to register sometimes, like what's a good and bad vocal performance.
Sure.
Because I'm so used to, I so accept that like a Lucio Fulci movie like has like that's what acting is. That's just good acting.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what you mean. So this is one of the rare cases where I was like,
This is hilarious.
My God.
Yep.
My
Well, it's funny
God.
you say that.
This is what
I've discussed with you guys in the past, the works of William Peter Blatty and William Friedkin. And like William Friedkin, this movie was, its entire audio track was removed and replaced with the exact, meticulous performances for the voiceovers that the movie required. And,
Absolutely.
And it is amazing. I mean, there's a lot of great laughs, like when a villain is when they're trying to convey how a villain is laughing ruthlessly, but it becomes like Bluto, or like an incredibly goofy, over the top video game character laugh.
Yeah, there's an uncanny flavor to it a little bit.
To everything, yes.
What is funny too is just how crude it is. Like they call every single character calls everybody, and not just the women, for the misogyny that you get in a lot of these trash action films.
Dirty
a
whore.
bitch or a whore or whatever it is. It's like it doesn't matter who the character is. It's just everyone is calling them a motherfucker, a bitch. It's honestly it's so crude, the dialogue, that I really just started laughing, and I found it
my
so
favorite
funny.
line of the whole movie. I mean, there's a lot of good ones, but my favorite one in terms of what you're speaking to, just like the macho vulgarity of it, was I'd sooner trust a rattlesnake than a bitch. Come on, man.
There's a great moment where someone, like, I don't know exactly what moment it is, but our heroes are in trouble, and right before they kick into action, which is also a jarring edit in and of itself, which happened in the film, someone I think the hero just calls a guy who's near him bitch, and then it just bam, and then he gets out of the trap or whatever. Totally, again, needless destruction, needless use of bitch, but it's a crowd pleaser.
There's one more too, which this one is like it is very crude, and it is towards a woman with a backstory that is kind of sad. The tone of the movie doesn't make you feel all of these feelings you should, but it is there. But he eventually she says, "You'll be coming with me to seventh hell," which is kind of a badass line, and then he goes, "I don't think so." Long pause, fucking bitch. and there's something about it that is obviously that's horrible, but the pause and the totally unnecessary addition of that made me just laugh so fucking hard. So yeah, there's a ton of that in here. It's great.
It's the story of this movie. It's ridiculous. It's totally held together by just like the duct tape of your knowledge of how an American revenge action movie should function.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And everything else about it is just like, how can I construct the pure bad taste mania that I would like to around that kind of structure? And he does it to the point where he starts breaking the structure.
Yes.
And you're just like, I actually don't understand what, early on I was like, I think I kind of get, like, he's like, here's the guy, there's a bad drug smuggler, he's stealing a scientist, there's something that's going to stop drug dealing in Indonesia, that's not good. And, hot on his trail of this fugitive is just touching down in the Jakarta airport is this FBI agent, Peter Goldson, aka the Stabilizer, which I do want to mention too, Peter O'Brien, hulking physique, curly perm mullet, the 70s exposed chest hair look across the board. Apparently discovered by the Punjabi brothers who produced this movie, who saw him. The story goes, I saw a couple different people write about this. I don't know if this is just legend, it's passed along. The story goes they saw him in an airport coming in from New Zealand because he was just having a vacation week in Indonesia, I guess, and they saw him and they went from really, really far away. They kind of were like, is that Stallone?
I knew you would say that.
Rambo, baby.
And they were like, he sort of got the jaw, he's got the hair. He kind of looks like Rambo.
He also looks a little bit like a middle-aged Brian May.
That's probably actually closer to what he actually looks like, but they were so convinced that he was Stallone. They eventually produced another movie called The Intruder, where he played a guy named, I kid you not, Rambo.
I'm watching that.
So they legitimately were like, no, this is our Rambo, and here he is teaming up with this beautiful lady FBI agent partner, Sylvia Nash, who arrive, and they, you know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to try and find this drug smuggler, but they're obviously going to get, tailed by the dudes in the ominous suits and sunglasses, but with the added detail of those very funny gold triangle earrings every time I saw one, which symbolizes that they're part of his drug smuggling gang, the Golden Triangle. And they are here to, I think they literally say that it's a battle of good versus evil. It's not like we're here to stop a drug smuggler, and it's because they get into that really long, awkward car ride with their contact, their in-country partner, Captain Johnny, and they discuss that, listen, Debbie, we're dealing with the big leaguers here, the world's best criminals who are completely capable of upsetting the balance between good and evil. As impossible as it seems, what we need is a man with guts and ability to restore that balance. And I was like, oh, he's the stabilizer. Oh, like Indonesia is so unstable right now.
Thank God for Peter O'Brien.
And you know what? That's what the
Peter
action scenes tell you.
That's right.
Yeah,
Peter Goldson. Yeah, the boy.
Put some respect on that character.
It makes you sort of suspicious that yes, the name was reverse engineered, or the concept of the character was reverse engineered just from that name, the Stabilizer. Because, like, as my friend said, he doesn't do much of that in the film. But if you put in a line about how good and evil need to be balanced, much like the Force, then someone can come along and quote unquote stabilize the forces of good and evil, which then justifies the name, I guess. But it's wonderful.
Yeah, there is also a funny line that they have, and it's in the middle of the movie, and I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be any character motivation or a trait of some kind, but it's Johnny that tells Peter, the Stabilizer, and he says something like, he's like, only kill if it's absolutely necessary. And then the whole movie is just must be always necessary because every single person they cross dies in this. It's pretty, I just thought that line was so funny because it doesn't connect to anything else they're doing.
Yep.
But I guess that's the balance where they're like, we're the good guys. We only do it when it's absolutely necessary. But the rules of this film is go, go, go. So.
Well, and also Jakarta is already unstable. Like, look, we're already just trying to like drive to the fucking police station, and we're already starting car chases and where bad guys are nearly crashing into buses and destroying fucking roadside food stands. And I do like that one bit of choreography where they hijack a dude's truck who's just peeing on the side of the road, and he loves to include those details of like, hey, that's my truck, man.
Get back here.
Or that one guy who's riding his bike and they nearly crash into him, and he just loses control of his bike and falls into a lake, and he's like, oh, hey, fuck you guys.
And I love too that it's all like, it is genuine stunt work too. Like you see the guy full throttle go down the hill into the water, and the cart kind of go over him. There's really cool moments too where they insist on putting dummies wherever the characters were in the car, so that when they flip, it looks like bodies are just being ragdolled everywhere. And it's there's some, I was surprised at how much action there was right away and how much they were willing to actually destroy and everything when it came to the vehicles. I don't know, I guess I was expecting a lower budget in the sense of its action, and there's so much of it. Most of this movie is an action film, and even the dialogue is very short-lived and usually pretty stupid and humorous. So it's that type of movie where with a lot of these I get a little bit bored because you're waiting for the action. Honestly, because the characters are so ridiculous and outlandish, even the dialogue scenes are very fun in this. I was surprised at how much there was.
I was just about to say the movie just starts, and that's always good because even fun B movies and ones worthy of attention, there's a lot of downtime, and you're waiting for the good moments to come along again. And there's, like I said, this movie is not great pacing, but it just starts strong enough that you're ready to kind of coast through the rest of it. Where you got your cool song, you got the motorcycle crashing through the window completely needlessly, and then bam, next scene we're doing a car chase, we stole a fruit vendor's truck. Next scene, am I wrong that the Professor Father actually isn't dead. Don't we then see him in a prison? Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so
because
that was,
it's where they introduce the idea that he has the spiked shoes like a Bond villain or something like that.
Yes. It's so
Which
funny
has
that his
the
name-
greatest backstory ever when
so
he gets when they go to that contact with who's the guy who sets Peter up for the exposition where he gets to explain that why that Rainmaker is here and he's behind this kidnapping and why he's so hellbent on capturing him. And it's through the line, it seems like you're always chasing this Greg Rainmaker guy. Is there something you haven't told me? And he's like, I despise scum like Rainmaker because 7 years ago I tried to bust him and he slipped away. And then he raped and murdered my fiance Linda by stepping on her with spiked like cleats. And the sequence of him doing that, which they do show you,
Yes.
is him doing that while a framed portrait of O'Brien doing like a Stallone Cobra pose, but in like a see-through mesh muscle shirt that like Scott Glenn rocks and Urban Cowboy is staring down at them. And which we later see that Rainmaker has actually stolen and held onto and keeps on his wall to like shoot his machine gun at occasionally. And when we exit this flashback where he finishes telling that story, the guy just goes, "I'm sorry to hear that, Peter."
Just kind of chill.
That's all right. That's all right. It's fine.
Like how that played.
I'm here to get him now.
The play who played in the theater, like, in these sleazy movies, you're gonna get, some brutalization of women in this genre. And it's never pleasant to see, obviously, even if it's in a goofy movie. But even that scene where it's kind of silly already that he's stomping on her with a giant cleat foot, which is his trademark for some reason. But then when it cuts to the framed photo of a promo still of the character that's going to be on like the VHS jacket is in the room watching it, there's no way you're not going to laugh at that. And
that cut is
I always
nuts.
love when that happens. Like, in movies, there's a lot of late era Seagal movies where that happens a lot, where there's like stills of him from the movie promotion used or even better, stills from him from his younger period, like on his passport, which is just like a shot from him in, Above the Law, but they're using it in a 2007 Bulgarian funded movie that they need a young Seagal photo. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear that picture that she has in her room is a still from his promotion of the film or some film.
Yeah.
So
and
ridiculous.
I'm also glad that they, for the most part, like obviously everything is implied and it's happening, but for the most part, they just kind of cut from when it would really begin. And so I've seen movies with, this kind of sentimentality and all that, where they show the rape scene and it's far grosser. And I am kind of glad that this movie decided to just do the like simple cut and then adding the photo. Yeah, as tasteful as you can be, I suppose. And it's like, and adding the photo with it, whether it's on purposely funny or not, I have no idea. It is funny, so it kind of takes away some of that dread that you have while you're watching it.
The only thing that is truly grueling to watch in this film are and you know what? I have it playing on my screen right now, and it is hitting right as I bring it up. The poor geckos and lizards.
God.
They're guys taking a chunk out of it right now on my screen right now.
Yeah, I was cringing.
I
was
nuts.
like, oh.
I guess
pretty
it's
brutal.
to be like, he's just like, he's a unique henchman and they're like, look how evil he is. But it's strange that they also found a man that just did that for the movie at the same time.
There's two sequences. Sequences. there's two shots where we storyboarded this out. There's two shots. There's one in the beginning where it's just like a fair. It's just like a local like market.
Yeah, they're just like seeing the Indonesian sights and like street and like club performers and stuff like that. There's also like a guy who like crawls and like rolls in glass. There's another guy who's like slicing into his tongue, and then you have one guy who's like, he's like eating a live lizard. And I was I don't like that. I don't fuck with that.
No, I mean, well, look, it's like, it's one of those things, culturally. I mean, I eat a burger. I'm endorsing factory farming by definition, so I'm not going to get too morally uptight about it. But it's awful to look at. But then later in the movie, there's the henchman who pets it for a while and start calling it baby, and it's kind of goofy. But I knew in the theater, people were laughing like, "Oh, this is a cute little scene," but I knew that gecko's head.
he's gonna eat that
gecko's
shit.
head
He's
is
gonna
going in that
Ozzy
guy's
Osbourne
mouth
this
in about
shit.
5 seconds, and he did.
Yeah.
He did right on cue. Yeah.
And that one in particular, like the alligator one, the baby alligator, it's a little quicker, and he's doing it on its side. And honestly, the alligator looks like dead, even though I don't think it is, unfortunately. But with the lizard,
I think he's just taking it like a man.
Yeah, and with the lizard, it's just like it's crawling around. You see him chew on it like 3 different times. It's pretty gruesome, honestly. And like we've probably all seen an episode or a clip of Survival Man where obviously that happens, but this is a completely different context where the guy's just kind of enjoying it. So
I wasn't expecting it. Usually it's the freak Italians who are getting up to that nonsense.
The poor turtle
with the Italian cannibal movies.
That was the thing too. Is that we
gave their lives.
I don't know if we've covered it on the show, but I've definitely seen it a couple times. Cannibal Holocaust, where it has absolutely gruesome and disgusting animal killings.
We did Slave of the Cannibal God too as one of our virtual screenings, which everyone had to react to. The snake one I think is in that one. Which was
and honestly, Friday the
gross.
13th. I think the first one has an actual snake killing as well. Just as I'm thinking about animal killings here, but
it's in the cabin, right? There's like a snake in one of their cabins, and they kill it. Yeah, that might be 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I'll say about the scene with the guard who eats it is that it's during a scene where they're infiltrating one of the bad guys' like drug dens, and it is actually deployed because obviously he's being super gross, and he's like grunting baby while he's eating this fucking lizard. But there's something that was humorous, at least about that one, where I was like, this guard whose one job is to watch this door, he's getting so distracted because he's getting so horny for eating a lizard, and you actually see like Johnny and Peter Goldson approach, and they're like very confused about this. Like they actually do watch him do it for a while, and they're like, oh, I don't really understand and then they stealthily knock him out. Because they're like, well, he was so distracted. He didn't have to really do it stealthily. They just walk up behind him and just like whack him in the back of the head with a gun. They're like, that was a weird guy. And then none of that matters because they proceed to steamroll through the place on a dirt bike and barge through the wall anyway. And I was like, I don't know. Like the scene literally didn't need to exist except for the fact that they wanted to have this guard humorously get distracted. It just happened to be because he loves eating lizards.
That's one of the several warehouses where shit goes down. And I think that scene. Well, I mean, we should just start talking about like the action in this film because I don't remember which one it was. I saw this weeks ago. I kind of skimmed it today in preparation, but I mostly watched Miami Connection. But the action scenes in this film are quite entertaining, which isn't to say bad or like badly done altogether, but they go on really long. There's one where there's the same bass riff playing for about 7 minutes. No change in the key, no nothing. You're just watching people kind of like get barrels thrown at them, jump over barrels, throw barrels to the same bass loop in a way that becomes hypnotic.
They do have...
because Greg has the kidnapped scientist and they're trying to hunt him and they're trying to obviously find him. And so there's one section of this that is... Because we have to introduce the second villain, right? This is Victor. The whole deal. I think that's the first big action sequence. Yeah, because it's Greg Rainmaker, the leader of all of this, is simply like drinking his beer. He's smoking in his lair. He's got his beautiful Indonesian woman Nora, who's bathing in front of him. His feet up, up on the table, revealing his signature spiked shoes, and that he's torturing people with. And I do like the line they get later: "His shoes, watch out for his shoes, Peter." But we find out he is in cahoots with a local Indonesian crime boss, Victor, who is getting, as the scientist puts it, a generation of kids hooked on drugs to profit off them, which I do like that how enthusiastically he explains his strategy later. He's like, I learned from watching you. I give them the first dose for free, get them like addicted, and then I tell them to start selling their friends and family to get even more of them. It's like the most evil way you could possibly ever describe selling drugs. They have him describe it that way. and they're hanging the professor like in a dungeon, but like in a dungeon with a hilarious low ceiling staircase entrance that Greg Rainmaker has to come in on at one
like
point.
12 full seconds to like get down that staircase and no one's talking.
It's so funny.
It's out of like a Roger Corman set, like 60s horror movie kind of thing. That's the type of dungeon set that it feels like.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're literally just there to torture the detector and formula out of him, and they're asking him like, which gives out first, your stubbornness or your life? And so while they're doing that, it's Captain Johnny and Mr. Stabilizer himself. They, I think, get captured by Victor's goons and like brought to like the villa where they're tied up, and that's like the first really long action sequence where you start to understand the escalating nonsense in which this is going to be choreographed, which is that, I think one of the first things Peter Goldson does is he violently grabs a dude's testicles, headbutts him, and then there's a zoom in on him chewing very loudly his way out of his bindings. Like he's just like gnawing, like I'm gonna get my way out of this rope you've tied me up with. And then he starts kicking everyone's ass in the most, like, any ridiculous angle they can find, really. Does a henchman have a toupee? Okay, well, he's ripping it off. Is a henchman holding a weed whacker? Okay, well, he's getting his arm shoved into that.
There's one funny clip where Victor just gets knocked out because he bangs his head off of the pole for the stairs of the pool, and that's it.
It comes right after the weed whacker. You see, like, the most grotesque way, that yard could inflict violence on someone, and then the next one is just the guy bops his head on the pole, and it's relatively benign.
And this is, I guess, when they reintroduce the daughter of the professor, because she's the one that initially distracts them by crossbowing the guy on the diving board.
She comes in with the crossbow. Yeah, she was like, "Damn it, I was trying to hit fucking Victor, and I hit the poor guy on the diving board."
And then this becomes weird.
Don't they just run into each other like completely independently? Like she wants to kill him for her own reasons, and then they happen to go by the same tree on their way to do their separate missions. And they're like, oh, we should probably just team up.
Yeah, and they do
she wants to team up, but they're like, well, she's a lady. She can't team up with the cops. But then they realize that there's raw sexual magnetism between Christina and Peter Goldson. So then Johnny's like, well, we have to use that. And he's like, get close to her. I think she trusts you. She could give us some of her information she's gathered in her investigation. He's like, you don't have to tell me twice. That's like, that's a beautiful woman right there.
Yeah, and they also introduced that she knows Taekwondo, I think. And obviously she knows how to rock a crossbow. We've established that. So later on, they allow her to join, and she actually does get a fight scene, or at least a couple shots where she's kicking and punching, and it's kind of kick ass.
It turns into a full like special agent like squad action movie at a certain point where both of the couples are like double dating by murdering people is kind of how it's working. There is like a little bit of a rom-com section where they go, like, I think it's O'Brien rocking the cheetah print pants at the gun range, and he starts like calling up Christina, being like, chatting with her on the phone like he's like a schoolboy, and Johnny leaves the room saying that Christina can join them, and then he comes back in and he's like, psych.
Yeah.
It's so
by the way, I'm dating your partner now, Sylvia.
They almost like exchange high fives for getting laid. It's hilarious. I loved that scene because he just gets back in. He's like, I'm dating Cynthia. You're dating this girl. Let's go, bro. That's kind of what it feels like.
This is what you were saying earlier, Josh, about the attempt to imitate the American formula, and then because you're not American, you're dealing inevitably with some other, like approaches and angles that are going to disrupt that perfect formula, or you just, you're not necessarily, working with the same budget or talent. But I thought for sure in that scene they were going to go, hey man, everything's going so great for both of us, and he's like, I'm going to go, and he goes, okay. I thought we were going to then see Johnny get killed on his way to his date, because like if everything's going too good for a character, especially a partner, the partner has to die. But instead, it keeps playing. He comes back in, and they both just, like, as you say, basically high five each other for having girlfriends, and he doesn't get killed. And it just kind of, it's so fun to be thrown for a loop because you're used to knowing where these scenes usually go.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah,
it was
well, and
wonderful.
and then they realize they wrote themselves into a corner too, because he has to come in with a piece of paper that just says something on it, and they go, "This just came up," and they're like, "Oh man, we've got to move fast," and then they go to the next scene, and you're like, we literally never learned what that information is, why it was relevant. Doesn't matter.
It's the one thing I have to say. This might have been my biggest laugh in the theater, and I had to like stifle laughter because I didn't want to be, like distracting. But when Johnny, not Peter Gold, what's his name? Peter Goldstone, Peter Goldson.
Oh yeah, Harry
Peter
Goldson,
Goldson.
Captain Johnny.
Peter Goldson, not him, but Johnny. When he first gets with his girlfriend, they're kind of getting sexy, and then it hard cuts to an indeterminate patch of skin. And there's like a crack in the skin, and at first you're like, "Is this gonna?" I mean,
the fake.
Is
butt.
this gonna be an ass?
Fake butt. Yeah.
And then it zooms out after like, but it's like 12. Again, I'll go with 12. 12 seconds just on this like close up, and you're like, "What is it gonna be?" And it zooms out, and it's like his elbow or something. It's like his arm, and then they like kiss, and then they go to the next scene. It's not at all really all that sexual, and it was so baffling, so odd, and so unexpected, and really completely unnecessary. But it was a good half minute of the film that I was like, this is special, and I recommend, like this film just takes so many turns on a logic, like a logic plot wise, the logic scene to scene. It really throws you in the best way possible.
Yeah, there's also and this has popped up in at least one other movie very similar to this that we've covered. And it's I don't know what it is and why they think the timing is good, but there is a moment where the daughter tells Peter about her past with Victor, and there's like a whole like sexual assault that her father actually stopped and threw him into the mirror and everything. And then right after that, they go back to them by the pool, and then they kiss as if that was like a romantic moment for her backstory.
Great story.
And it's always like, I think what they're getting at is like, oh, they're connecting because they're sharing each other's, deep past with each other. But after you kiss after something like that, it's always so strange. And I don't know why movies like this do that. But yeah, I mean, in this, just because of the context of everything, it's almost humorous, but it's so ridiculous, obviously.
Yeah, well, and I think it's meant to being incredibly generous to this movie.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's meant to be like she is angry about the like rapist weirdo attitudes of Victor, and he's obviously upset about the same. Like he had a very similar flashback story that he told about Rainmaker. So I think it is supposed to be uniting, that their mission is the same, because they're two guys that they hate who are both rapist evil assholes are teaming up together. And now they are going to jointly kick their asses with dirt bikes and flip their goons over tables and do donuts in all their cocaine, which is like what happens in like the big drug den sequence. Which I will say, one of the things I'll credit this movie with is that I don't think, obviously the action is not on that caliber. I appreciate that they actually do aim for like Jackie Chan inspired, like the multi-layered set.
Yeah, it kind of reminded
fighting
me, and
they do.
And I'm saying this again with just a comparison. It's obviously not even close, but it kind of reminded me of that set they have in Tiger on the Beat at the end, where they have the double layer. It's even got a similar staircase that rises into the second story, and you can see both the second story and
Tiger
the first.
on the Beat. What an incredible movie. We gotta cover that at some point. Good. I forgot about that's what this movie was missing, a chainsaw fight at the end.
Might be the only thing when it comes to the items.
That's really the only thing, because the main drug den set piece has a lot of stuff. It's got it's got Peter riding the bike up the stairs and riding like off of faces while guys are like leaping from the top to like drop kick in slow motion, and they're using everything in that room: the chairs, the canisters, tables, boxes. There's chalk everywhere so that there's fucking dust going up into the air every time something breaks. The great use of shelves and glass, and every sharp or blunt object in that room at some point gets used by somebody. But maybe my favorite bit of choreography is when that one dude is running up the wooden I guess it's a platform. It's kind of like a ramp, but it's boarded almost like stairs. Either way, I think he gets punched into the air through the bottom of the floorboards, and the guy launches into the air and then rolls down the entire ramp, where then he has a fight below. And I was like, he got like Donkey Kong, down all the way. And and then this is also the one where they at one point pull out like the flamethrower, and it's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. I mean, even some of the details of the action, like when the guy gets body slammed through the stairs, there's a part where both, I think it might have been Harry Capri playing Johnny, he gets tackled into this like kind of glass rooftop thing, and both him and the henchman go into it. It seems honestly pretty dangerous. That's the thing about this movie too. The stunt work looks dangerous at times, legitimately, and I'm imagining
which is always
this
a plus on this
crew.
show. But with small productions like this that we don't know the history
no one
about,
died,
I'm always like, how many deaths am I watching? I don't know.
Yeah, because some of this does get pretty wild, but I mean, it's very, very
some
impressive.
of the car ones. I was honestly worried mostly with like the flipping and exploding cars.
Yeah, and every once in a while,
most of the other ones, I was like,
they'd actually swing a blade every once in a while too, and I could like, maybe it's just the effect was good enough, but it looked like they were legitimately looking or using steel chairs and like hammers, because you could actually see sometimes them anticipate the fact that they're about to do the blow like from a hammer or something and pause because the guy isn't getting out of the way in time yet. So it feels as if they're very cautious about that.
But see, I'm also extremely hypocritical because, like, at the same time, maybe my favorite stunt that any stunt guy can do is getting like lit on fire for an extended period of time. Yeah. It's just one of the all-time best movie stunts that CGI fire has stolen from us.
Agreed.
And so watching the moment when they whip out the flamethrower and guys are just like being ignited into fireballs, and you can even briefly like see them in the full fire suits just like waving their arms around and stuff. And, guys used to light themselves on fire for our entertainment is all I'm saying. And it's a beautiful sight, even if the flamethrower, when it's pulled out here, it is a surprise because it just like busts out of like a random cupboard at one point. They're like, hey, there's a flamethrower here.
Like it's Resident Evil 4 where you just discover a secret weapon.
So it's not quite as good as Chekhov's flamethrower in The Hidden, but I understand that not everyone has that in them. So
it was kind of funny because when it's presented, I thought, oh, he's holding a machine gun, and then it shows the backpack that comes with a flamethrower, and I'm like, oh my fucking god, we're about to get it done here. So I like the escalating weaponry. I think that's a lot of fun, and it does.
I do love that they escape that place on fire using barrels. That they just go into the Oh no, sorry. That's actually later that they do that. But there's a lot of barrel use in this. In the first one, it's when they put that guy into the barrel,
torture,
and they roll him around in the back of the truck, and they ram into the tree over and over again.
now remind me, because that is another scene that threw me for a loop, because normally what would happen in an action movie is our heroes aren't monsters. They'll put a thug in a barrel maybe, but in this scene they again completely unnecessarily torture a man for, I'm going to say, about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. By the way, the movie, it just showed me the crack of skin scene that I was talking about earlier.
Beautiful.
I'm staring at it right now. The barrel scene, they just torture a guy for 2 minutes, and does he die?
Yep.
I can't remember if he dies.
What's funny is that they're trying to get information from him, and then they do that, and then they take him out, and he's still like, guys, I don't know anything.
He's like, I really don't know, I swear.
Right. That's what it was, is that that at least would have been justified, because then he'd be like, all right, here's what you wanted,
right.
But he actually is completely innocent of this knowledge, and they just, gave him PTSD for the rest of his life. And
it is the most elaborate torture I've ever seen, where they're stuffing him into a barrel. He's like, hey, help me put him in the back of this like big like this big like rock truck, and then they start ramming into a tree over and over again, so that barrel just whiplashes back and forth in order to help this guy remember. They end up pulling him out. They're like, now do you remember? And he's like, no, guy, I swear to God, like they literally don't. Like, I have no idea where their lair is. Like they blindfold us when they drive us here, I think is what he says.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what you would see the bad guys do in any other movie to establish that they're really bad.
Yeah.
Instead, it's the heroes doing it.
And it's like the movie.
Well, that's stabilization, baby.
Yeah, come on, right? The movie would usually
stabilizing means you have
convince
to do some evil in pursuit of good, or else you're not stabilizing. Good and evil.
Exactly, it's a balance. And the movie would establish that, you know, they're good just by making it so they get the information after. That, you know, they still tortured somebody, but then the logic of this kind of action movie would be like, okay, well, they got the information and they can save the day. But
The
just
guy
to
was a
not
lying
happen-
coward anyway, you know?
but to not happen at all is so funny. So yeah, I thought
It's
that
great.
was amazing. And then this is also when I think right after that the professor dies, and that's where, you know, Gina's now kind of more motivated to take vengeance and
Yeah, she cries and says daddy for about like 30 seconds while the drug den explodes in the background.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. And this is where we get some of the great lines, because we go back to Rainmaker, where he's been informed that what did Nora do again? Did she like cheat on him, or why did he get mad?
I think she
nothing.
Oh, she doesn't do anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's
why I
he
was confused.
suspects
She's
this is
innocent.
his mistress.
Nora innocent.
This is his
Innocent
wife
girl.
or mistress, right?
Yeah.
Is Nora?
Yes.
And he seems so all of a sudden
they,
not into
they
it.
say that she double crossed him.
Okay.
I guess
And
by like
bugged the
slipping
place.
Information. Yeah, and then it turns
I see.
out. I think it turns out that she didn't. Though I think Josh is right. That
Well,
she
yeah,
actually did not.
and we already know,
Another
because that's just it.
situation
When the scene comes up, because it's when we're introduced to the secret like mountain island like bond layer base that they have, and we're
Yeah.
also introduced to maybe my favorite character, Indonesian Mr. T, who is like one of his goons he's hanging out with. But yeah, Victor, in order to keep the partnership alive with Rainmaker, who's starting to realize like, why am I hanging out with you? Like, you're just like, you're stupid. He lies about his girlfriend Nora, saying that she's been bugging the place and informing the cops on him, which they
Right.
eventually do find the bugs. But we already know that those are Christine's bugs, because she's been
Right.
taping the conversations with her dad and all of this stuff, collecting all this evidence. And like,
right.
she tells that to Peter. So yeah, so Nora literally goes like, Victor is just like lying. And it's funny because there's already there's already precedent for this too, because when torturing the one guy earlier in the film, Rainmaker says, you know, I'm torturing you because you failed to assassinate Peter Goldson when tried to run away. And the guy literally, while being like strapped up in a torture dungeon, goes, no, I didn't. I'd totally still kill him right now. I said I'd still kill him. Victor is like lying to you, man. And then he electrocute and kills that guy anyway. So for some reason, the Rainmaker's character is that Victor can just make blatant lies that everybody says is a lie. And Rainmaker just goes, nah, he's my bro. He wouldn't lie to me like
Victor's the
that.
man.
And
He really trusts this guy who described selling drugs to children as a pleasurable thing that he enjoys doing. So I guess Rainmaker is, you know, it's a comment on both of them. But yeah, and then at one point, another minion of Rainmaker pretends to double cross Rainmaker and give our heroes intel, but then he
Benny,
also was
the legend.
yeah, but then he was also lying, and that gets them in another warehouse where they're put into another.
Yeah, it's getting confusing. I'm getting cross-wired a little bit. now that we're talking
Warehouse
about
battle
it.
number 3.
But basically, what we can steer our summary to. Oh, here's the gecko scene. It's coming up on my TV.
Oh God! Oh
Poor
no!
guy.
Oh no! Well, the one thing I'll say too is that Nora is like begging, being like, "No, this is slander. Like, don't listen to him." And that's when he gets that great line about, "I'd sooner trust a rattlesnake than a bitch." And is he the one who also gets the line, "The I'd get rid of you if you weren't so damn good in bed"?
Yeah.
Is that that too? Yeah.
That is.
I think that's
I think he
Rainmaker,
says that
right?
right after
Yes.
the other. To be honest, it's
Yeah, and then he gives
evil.
the bro handshake with Victor, and I think that's when they capture Tina, who's loaded up in the back of the truck, by surrounding her convertible and just pushing her up onto a ramp in the middle of an intersection, which is actually, it's funny. I thought we were gonna get like a Friedkin-esque car chase or something. It turns out they literally just like grab her and they're like, all right, let's we're gonna kidnap her, resulting in Peter and Johnny and Sylvia then having to go full squad mode and using Benny the henchman's information to attack, do a full-on assault on their base, which they start off in like a Miami Vice like boat chase moment, where they're getting like torpedoed by like other boats, and then they pull a maneuver I don't fully understand, where they like throw really tiny cans of what just looks like mustard gas in the water and then get into scuba gear to evade all of the machine gun go fast boats that are about to like chase them down. And like they're very plainly visible through these tiny tufts of like gas.
So bizarre. Where I
like
guess
it's not covering the boat at all. Like I think they think it's a smoke bomb and that they're gonna go on. And I'm like, guys, where else could they have gone? They went underwater.
In the script, I'm sure it was an immense fog that we're weaving through, and then in the way they filmed it, it just kind of looks like not that.
And then
it was a little bit more Bond stealth. Yeah, they scuba dive their way onto the island base, which is where they find Nora with a bomb strapped around her neck. They defuse it, and they get her to help guide them around the base so that they can get into
Nora
once again, which never comes into play, because every time they go, we are going to stealthily use information a character has to navigate like these areas. Their main plan of attack is to loudly Uzi fire or loudly break a dirt bike through a wall, or there's no strategy to these set pieces really. They literally just like they tank their way through every situation they get into.
This entire movie, there is no subtlety.
The Nora sort of becomes a member of their team, because then she's kind of like her dress gets all torn up and she's running kind of bloodied on the beach, and I think that she's the only member of the team that gets killed, right? No one else gets killed, because as we were getting near the end of the movie, I was like, you know what? No one of the team has died yet, which is usually something that raises the stakes. But
even YK Kim knew that. You need to slash Jim's chest open, baby. We need to get some stakes.
Exactly. At least the threat of someone dying. But then Nora actually does. There's some sort of chief thug who is it the Mr. T character? Is it Indonesian Mr. T who kills her?
No,
someone kills her.
I thought it was Victor. I thought they exchanged shots.
It's Victor. Yeah, you're right.
Well, no.
Yeah, which is fitting.
Is it? Yeah. But then Christina shoots Victor while Victor is shooting her, because they both end up going down.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
So
that's what it is. They both die at the same time.
I just missed the one detail.
So that's kind of sad. But then we have the final and pretty goofy fight, I guess, between Rainmaker, the big bad, and Pete Goldson.
Yeah,
and,
because that's when it's become a full-on island war, and there are they're shooting guys out of like mountain hiding spots. They're using like forklifts as weapons. They're throwing grenades left and right, and they do a full thing where Nora, I think shortly before dying, someone tries to like Wile E. Coyote, like dynamite her at one point, and then so that's when they say, I may die, Victor, but you're coming with me to the seventh hell. And I don't think so, stupid bitch. And I think that's the line where he shoots her. It's so funny.
It's so funny.
And Mr. T leads an army of dirt bikers on walkie-talkies, and Peter is then, I think, trying to, they're trying to avenge Nora a little bit. They're like drop kicking through like the windshields of cars, and there's more random explosions going off left and right. And then Peter pulls off one of the best maneuvers in the entire movie. Which, sorry about saying there was no strategy to the action. I just lied because I'm about to describe some of the best strategy I've ever seen an action hero pull off, which is that he clotheslines dirt bikers and knocks them out.
Yeah.
And every single and at a certain point, he does it to like the first three guys. And then like two more guys come by, he clotheslines them as well. And then two more guys come, he's clotheslining them. One guy pops a wheelie through because he's a genius. And he turns around, and I think, does he just shoot him? I think I think he just M16s him, the guy who popped. And I was like, you could have just been doing that to all these guys in the first place. But the best part is the bikers continuing to ride through it, despite the fact that he has collected a pile of dozens of bikers who have all been clotheslined and fallen on the ground. So by the time the last guys are coming, you're like, guys,
get it together.
They're acting like NPCs in like a Hitman game.
I was about to say he discovered the gameplay loop. He settled comfortably into the rhythm of clotheslining guys with his bike. And then it's always funny when Rainmaker has to kind of epically enter a scene or walk up with his clunky nail shoes that he's been consigned
Look out for his shoes.
Yeah, to having be his badass,
It's like that line in Billy Jack where they're like, look out for his feet. He can kill people with his feet, man.
so then he stands off finally with Goldson and he gets dragged, but then briefly gets out of it, wriggles out of
They
his
drag
jam.
each other.
Yeah.
That's the best moment is Rainmaker tries to rope Peter up and drag him to death, like I guess you do in like in westerns with like horses when you're just like dragging a guy until he dies. We actually saw it recently in the Furiosa movie too. That's what Chris Hemsworth character likes to do, is just like drag people around until they die. And so there's precedent for that, and it's so funny because Rainmaker does it to him and they're like, get that goddamn motherfucker, and then their move is to like reverse Uno card him, where they get Peter out of the rope, and then they put him in the rope, and then they start dragging him around to death. And I was like,
it looks legitimately
so
painful
awesome.
too. The stunt work,
It does.
It's like they're on just on a full rocky dirt road, and the speed looks like it's not sped up or anything. And I was genuinely concerned. But it is pretty
And speaking
cool.
to Brendan's point of the good guys like doing the shit the bad guys would do, like they're just copying him.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they take his shoes.
Stomp his,
that
was
one
that
hurt.
his groin, by the way? Was he stomping on his balls? I couldn't tell from the way the angle cut back and forth when
Maybe his
Peter
legs.
Yeah, okay.
I just loved the insert shot of him like actually like having to like tie the laces and being like,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
dude, I'm putting these shoes on, bro.
And then I love that this happens all so fast too, because you go from this to the foot thing, and then next thing you know, Peter's on a motorbike jumping a ramp so that he can grab onto the heli that's taking off. It's just like things start to happen.
Presumably, if anyone is listening to this, hopefully they've watched the film already because we've spoiled stuff. But it was a great
Spoiler
reaction.
show, baby. They know the rules.
Yeah. Okay. Good. It was a great reaction when Rainmaker is getting away in a helicopter. It's a classic movie villain getaway. And then Goldson grabs onto after jumping, from his bike, grabs onto it. And it's not really, it's not very, very heroic. He like tries to open the door, and then Rainmaker just like punches him and he falls, but then right before he falls,
He one-shots the helicopter,
one
right?
shot, and he shoots the helicopter
Gas
once,
tank,
and
baby.
the entire helicopter, the gas tank, and the entire helicopter explodes immediately. It's not quite on the level of Blood Debts. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that one and the amazing ending of that.
I don't think I have.
That's one to put on the list. But at the end of that film, a villain is essentially one-shotted in one of the most just comical and satisfying ways possible. And this is not quite at that level, but it was a really funny thing because first you're laughing that Goldson is dispatched easily with all he's managed to do up until that point and just falls off a helicopter. But then you're laughing even harder because he just taps the helicopter once and the entire thing goes up in flames and the villain.
Yeah, like he could have taken that shot, like gotten off the motorcycle and just like calmly taken that shot, and it would have had the same effect. But he had to have the whole thing where he's like one armed hanging off it, like
it's nice and
an
clunky.
amazing Stallone action hero. Yeah,
it's because it's not very cinematically rendered, so you just see him kind of fall, but also the helicopter blows up and everything's fine. So
and I mean,
it's
you
wonderful.
kind of expect that of the cliches of the movie like this. So, but I will say there was an added quality to this where at a certain point, it became clear to me that like no vehicle or set was being introduced that Arizal like did not intend to set on fire or explode. So there was an extra funny quality to the bad guy running to the helicopter. Cause I was like, dude,
that's dumb.
Have you seen a single vehicle in this entire last 30 minutes not explode? Yeah. Like I would just like open your eyes. Yeah. Like, what are you
not
doing
safe.
right now?
You are only safe on ground. No vehicles around you.
And even then you're going to get dragged across it. But I was like, lo and behold, he's going to.
This action hero detail I found just very funny because it shows restraint, surprisingly, saying this about the stabilizer. He only takes his shirt off at the very last scene to show
That
off
is
the
funny.
chest. And I thought that was actually very funny.
I had that written here too.
Yeah, there's
where
no
he,
moment.
he waits like there's no one left. It's the same thing with the guys at the end of Miami Connection when they're still screaming and running through the forest and like every ninja is dead.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, he waits until he's crawling out of the water, having die you bastard his way out of that helicopter altercation. And then, rips his shirt off, goes full Stallone mode with the wet hair, and then just starts like hugging his new buddies.
That's some restraint, man. To not have a full scene where your pecs are just jiggling from a machine gun. Good for him.
Yeah, Stallone didn't have that restraint.
Nope. No, that's right. Peter O'Brien, a humble guy.
I still think about that close up of his just like abs and biceps while he's firing that like chain gun into the computer system. Yeah.
Great. That's exactly what I was imagining.
It's beautiful. That's
But yeah, that's the end. They hug. They're all united. They're friends. Unfortunately, Nora did pass away. Rest in peace, Nora. But everyone else is happy.
Yeah, Nora got done the dirtiest of any character in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Because she was having a great time being the mistress of a drug kingpin, and then and then
got framed.
Not bugging him and informing the cops, but she got blamed for it anyway.
Yeah,
Damn.
I mean, in fairness, she was, I presume, a partner in crime with an incredibly evil man for most of her life.
Well, anyone can be part of the squad. Anyone can be part of the squad,
right?
As long as you have that one redeeming scene. It nullifies everything else.
She went out a hero. She tried to kill what's his name, Victor. And
I think she does. Oh yeah, no, I guess she does. She's the one.
And she does admit, like, she straight up says, like, I am going to meet you in the 7th circle of hell. So she knows that she's been doing some bad things.
That's a sick line. She also gets one of the best hero poses in the movie when her like leg is like sticking out of her dress a little bit, and she's just resting her the machine gun on like her knee, standing out like next to the big landscape on the mountain.
Yeah, she goes.
Good for her.
She goes total badass mode for the last 5 minutes, and I really liked it, to be honest. And honestly, I wanted to mention,
which was nice because every woman gets like assaulted or like attempted assaulted at some point in this movie, and I was a little bit like, it does breach that line of like crudeness and ugliness at a certain point where I think there's some people who it could affect how much fun they have with it. Not everybody, but I do think that there were a couple moments where I went like, oh, okay, guys, come on, give us something. And so like having a moment like that to kind of counteract it a little bit did for example, eliminate the distastefulness or wash it away of like that one horrible line that Victor gets. I think we skipped it because it's so bad. The one that he does with Tina. Do you remember what's
where he's gonna have sex with her in front of her entire family or something like that? Some wild thing like that.
Your father will cry in hell seeing me fuck you in front of everyone. Is the line he gets while bringing her out of the dungeon.
That's wild.
That sounds like something a villain would say.
Victor.
So
that's very Victor. Yeah,
he's pretty bad.
And it's true, but I was like, dude, she's already had like 2 attempted assault scenes. Leave Christina alone.
I do think I did want to highlight Jilly Beans is her name. She plays Sylvia, and she doesn't get a lot of moments, but she does have a specific action scene in one of the warehouses where she's doing like some incredible acrobatics, doing like backflips and grabbing onto ropes and stuff.
She gets to roll over the van at one point, right? Or the truck that he's driving through. I remember there's one warehouse set piece in the middle where it is similar to the multi-layered like sort of Chan inspired one that they were doing earlier, but they throw the added aspect of Peter Goldson is driving a Jeep through every wall the building has while everyone is like rolling and jumping and fighting each other. And there are some extras or like fighters, and I think she's one of them, who literally has to at some point like jump over or like cartwheel around the Jeep as it's just destroying walls everywhere. She's like, hey, I'm trying to break a guy through a table right now and shove cocaine in his face.
Yeah, so there's moments that they get, but yeah, the highlights are usually they focus on Peter and Harry, the 2 lead martial artists, but some of them get a moment or 2.
Yeah. This is just a genuinely surprising. It's a film that will surprise you. Obviously, if you're listening, you probably saw it already, and that's what really energized me about it. Is I didn't really know it was going to happen because, as we said before, it's great when the almost desperation to adhere to a winning formula causes the formula to break down. And that's what's happened here. I can only think of a few American films trying to, do the American formula that reached that level. I think Stone Cold is an example where
the greatest.
It is so desperate to be a great action movie that it becomes a wonderful parody of an action movie and is not at all you should not take it seriously. But most of the time it's from people who are not from America, who have, this desire to turn in their assignment of a Hollywood action movie. And it's way more interesting. So The Stabilizer is a great example of that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're pivoting towards the reductive rating round on The Stabilizer, on a first go for me, I'll say I was a little bit more baffled and confused than even Miami Connection for large portions of it. So it's going to end up closer into the high 3 territory for me. Nice. I do want to see more Arizal though, and I do want to maybe once I'm a little bit more familiar with him, I think I'll end up kind of coming back to this. I also kind of wish I had the theater experience with this. Watching this tired after work yesterday by myself, I was like, I think there were some qualities that might have went over my head about how much of a bizarre sort of lost in translation caricature it can be at times. But I do think that it is, pretty amazing to see someone do their best to weaponize these cliches and these formulas that they, clearly work for an American movie going public. And clearly, the whole point of exploitation, exploiting trends is that, you can get money. Some producer will pay you to make this because they can make a quick buck on it with just a poster and a log line. And for movies being made under those conditions, it's very clear that this guy was like, how do I just make the most face melting, overstimulating, bloodthirsty, chaotic nonsense that I can. And on that level, he absolutely succeeds. This has a nonstop, ridiculous martial arts fighting, dirt bikes going through walls, flamethrower violence, weed whacker violence. At a certain point, machine gun fire just becomes the entire sound design of the movie for the last 20 minutes of the movie. I felt like I couldn't even hear if people were saying anything or not. And yeah, I will say I do. He's not the most charismatic guy. I did enjoy Peter O'Brien as the Indonesian curly mulleted Sylvester Stallone. And I enjoyed some of the absolutely bizarre details of his FBI agent quest to avenge his fiancée, who was murdered with spike shoes over a framed portrait of himself
in a mesh shirt,
and how everything revolved around a scientist who invented a narcotics detector that we never see, and the scientist dies halfway through the movie, and they forget about him.
I just forgot about it in the course of our conversation.
It's just such nonsense, but with the benefit of we really do just want to be as hilariously and ridiculously vulgar as we possibly can with ridiculous you bitch, or or fucking even the good guys are doing horrible shit, even making fun of the goons by ripping their toupees off or torturing people who don't have information. And we know that they don't have information.
It's like the guy doesn't, Arizal, he doesn't quite know the limit of what a hero, there's that fine line between badass and ruthlessly, cruel, and he doesn't always quite land on the right line of what an American audience has been taught to expect, or at least in the same, because honestly, there's a lot of, we all know there's a lot of horrible stuff that action heroes do were they not presented as and painted
virtuous character
as a virtuous character by the rules of the Hollywood formula of action films, but in this one, it just kind of sometimes loses that sense of where the line is, and it makes it more interesting, which is always what I'm kind of more worried about. So,
and the name of the game clearly was just escalating needlessness. They were just if you can get it in there, get it in there. And at a certain point, that did kind of become rewarding at a certain
when there's a
point for me,
pile
'cause
of
there were-
bodies of guys who have all been clotheslined by the same trick that you like, again, a more restrained or tasteful movie would have just had happen once. It's hard not to love that.
That's what I mean, is there's parts of it that I think are like, you know, where it gets crude and ugly in some more indefensible ways, where it does, you know, when it does throw in that every woman character gets assaulted at some point, or any live animal that appears on screen gets eaten in gratuitous detail by an actual actor. There's some parts where I go, you know, like that's kind of stuff where I can't recommend a movie like that to anyone with like a normal functioning brain. They have to be like a sleazy fiend, I think.
Right.
But if you're operating in that realm already, that same quality where it goes needlessly with bad taste and becomes graphic like that is the exact thing that has made this guy an underground bootleg action junkie legend in a way. So like, I absolutely see why this guy has had an auteurist project formed around him a little bit. On top of that, the last thing I'll add, this is the kind of movie where, again, it's such a small crew. You have no idea what the production history or what the fucking labor laws were like in Indonesia in 1985 or 84, whenever they actually shot this. So you do watch this movie, and if you're just a stunt guy, and if you want to see irresponsibly dangerous stunts just left and right all the time for no reason that makes any sense to the narrative or to the characters, you can't do much better than this, I don't think. So enjoy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm gonna give it a 4. I love this. I thought it was so ridiculous and cartoonish and silly and crude and mean spirited, and it's kind of like the opposite of why you like Miami Connection. But I think this that's kind of what makes this a good pairing too. It is interesting to watch like the friendship, lighthearted side of this kind of action film, and then you go into the just most mean-spirited version of it. And honestly, I think the dialogue, which is usually what weighs these kind of movies down, is just as cartoonish and hilarious and silly and ridiculous as the action sequences, and that really does help with the nonsense plotting and pacing that's in the film. Because every time a bad guy opens his mouth, I was pretty much laughing. Like, I was just having a great time. Yeah. And I think it did help that I was also watching it with my brother Shane. And any time that this kind of movie comes onto the show, I love telling him, and we're like, we have to watch it together, because it's the type of humor that we connect on. And it's like, we were just laughing so hard throughout it. And I do think that
watch it with your brothers.
Yeah, watch it with friends or your brothers. It's so funny. It really is, and it is crude and it is offensive and all of that. But to me, it was just so cartoonish. I couldn't really care to really be sensitive about it, personally speaking. So and I think Harry Capri and Peter O'Brien have some surprisingly good chemistry for the moments that they have together, and the ridiculous ADR that they have that is going throughout the movie. I think it's a lot of fun, and I would highly recommend, especially, I mean, if you're following this podcast, you would probably love this kind of movie, so go for it. It's on Tubi.
It is on Tubi.
For you, Brendan.
We're rolling it now. Yeah, I mean, look, I recommended it for this episode. I obviously think it's in the 4 to 5 territory for me of a B movie. What I want out of a B movie, it's there. Mm-hmm. It's got it. And just as a way, since I agree with everything you guys said, by way of guiding us all to more Arizal films, I have the Spectacle NYC list of films that they screened here. And to your point, Josh, the first one that screened was To Burn the Sun, which is a really cool title. And that has actually, the protagonist is a young woman who carries out a revenge fantasy after, as they tastefully write, bandits steal her innocence and slaughter her family. So it's the classic rape revenge fantasy in the city of Jakarta.
Slightly switching the formula up.
Yeah,
okay.
So that's called To Burn the Sun. They showed Double Crosser, which has Peter O'Brien again. They showed The Stabilizer. Obviously, we just watched that. Special Silencers. Final Score and American Hunter. And American Hunter is one of both Final Score and American Hunter are the Christopher Mitchum collaborations. Robert Mitchum's son.
Yeah, Final Score is the one that I've heard from most people who are like in this like underground action scene, is like the one that apparently has like the action sequence of his career in the climax of that one. I actually had people comment immediately saying that if I liked The Stabilizer, you should immediately watch Final Score, because almost every review was like, it's not quite Final Score. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, I guess that's what we got to do next.
Final Score. Oh my God. Also, I'm going to watch this. I haven't watched it yet, but it has decent ratings. It is another underseen one. And Peter O'Brien was in a movie with Cynthia Rothrock, who is just an amazing martial artist that did Yes, Madam. And that movie couldn't recommend enough. But I just got to check that out because, two kick-ass martial artists right there. So.
Oh, and I will absolutely be watching Peter O'Brien's Rambo.
Yes. Let's go. All right.
And weirdly, Peter O'Brien, Cynthia Rothrock was in a movie called China O'Brien. So it's just O'Brien. I don't think Peter O'Brien is anything to do with China O'Brien, but it's all coming together. But yeah, no, I had a great time. I'm glad you guys were into this one, and we got to talk about it because life is complex. You need the innocence of Miami Connection, but you also sometimes need to face the sort of hard Scrabble themes of the Stabilizer as well. That's what makes.
Well, I mean, that's how we get balance.
That's how exactly.
You are
that's
the
how you even the
Stabilizer.
score. Exactly. Now
we have done some stabilizing
now.
ourselves. Yeah, that's right. Look at that. All right. Well, yeah, I think that is going to wrap it up for this week's episode. That was Miami Connection from 1987 and The Stabilizer from 1986. Thanks so much, Brendan, for joining us and for bringing these films on with you and showing them to us. I don't think I would have got around to The Stabilizer anytime soon, so I'm glad that I did. We plugged that at the beginning of the show, but maybe give us a little taste here. Blowback season 5 is on the way, September 20th. What stage are you guys in?
As we speak right now, I'm editing the show. I'm putting the final touches on the music of the show as well, and we're getting the last of our interviews together. So we should be ready to go on September 20th is the release date, and you can sign up for it anytime you like, ahead of time or the day of, on blowback.show. And it is the season, in a sense, it's the season everyone's been asking of us for a long time. It's about Cambodia, but to describe and to flesh out the story of Cambodia, Henry Kissinger, Richard Nixon, and the Khmer Rouge, you obviously need to cover what led to that conflict itself, which was the expansion of the Vietnam War. So people have wanted us to treat Vietnam for a while. I'm always resistant to what people ask me to do, so I've tried to see if we can navigate away from that. But it's inevitable in telling the story that you're going to get your Vietnam and your Blowback, your chocolate and your peanut butter mixed together. So we're excited to do that. We went to Cambodia and Vietnam personally to report and get some interviews and actually be on the ground this time around, which we visited the other countries, most of the other countries that we've done seasons on, but after the fact. And that was largely due to COVID hitting when we started the show. But this was kind of a new thing for us to be able to integrate our trip that we took into the reporting and the writing of the season.
That's incredible. So
it'll be great. And like I said, blowback.show, just sign up, throw in your credit card information, and it'll come out on September 20th. And we are looking forward to heading back into the breach with everybody this year.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Can't recommend that enough. I will be listening up myself. For our listeners, we're going to be back in 1 week's time over on the Patreon feed, where we are going to be doing, speaking of, we're kind of in heavy hitter mode a little bit right now too, doing what they want, giving them what they want, because they've been asking for a long time for us to finally do an episode on it. On
let them
Alien.
Feel they have power over you.
We've done 6 years of the show and somehow never covered Ridley Scott's Alien, and there is for the first time since we started the show, there's a new Alien movie on the way. So we figured, finally, let's do it. Let's talk about Alien. And the one deal Jamie and I like to make is anytime they force us to cover an all-time classic A-picture type of episode, we like to do a very strange sideways pairing. So we are going to be pairing it with the B-est of B movie things that could possibly be connected to it. The Suckling, which also has a it is a ridiculous, monstrous movie where the xenomorph is an aborted fetus in a back alley abortion clinic. And it just absolutely just starts tearing people to shreds.
You guys thought the stabilizer was crude. I mean,
yeah, that's right, dude.
Week after week, baby.
I know, and that's why we were like, dude, what's the opposite of Alien? Like, let's really,
well, the Suckling is almost like what Alien would have been if Dan O'Bannon were in full creative control for the rest of the production of the film, rather than taking the chestburster idea and the script he made and then giving it over to Ridley Scott and the Walter Hill and all the A-listers. But Suckling's great. Suckling is great.
I can't wait.
I do weirdly enjoy that movie a lot more than I should. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about next week on the Patreon. And then in 2 weeks' time, because there's just so many things coming out that tie into things we've never covered, we're going to be back with a special guest who knows a lot about the actor Brandon Lee. And there is a new remake of The Crow coming out very soon. I don't remember if we're timing it exactly right or not, but we're going to finally talk about The Crow, and which was a great excuse. Because I like that movie as is, but it was also a great excuse to talk about the movie Rapid Fire, which also stars Brandon Lee and came out 2 years, I think, earlier, and has a great Powers Booth villain performance and is him going more sort of action star mode. So we're going to have a lot of fun talking about Brandon Lee until we obviously get to the end of The Crow, where we're going to be very sad, but we're going to be talking about some good movies. And we're going to be talking about it with another Brandon. I didn't realize that. We're going, this is, wow, Brendan and Brandon mode right now. So that's what you can expect in 2 weeks' time over on the main feed. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy.